Senator Case, Senator Ide, Senator Pappas,
Here.
Representative Brown, Representative Campbell,
Excuse me, sorry.
Representative Lean,
Here.
Representative Lucas,
Present.
Representative Riggins,
Here. Sorry.
Representative Storer, Representative Stivar,
Present.
Representative Ward,
Here.
Co-Chairman McEwen,
Here.
Chairman Locke.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. So I believe we have on the first order of business, we have approval of the minutes. Sorry, order-wise, do we need to move that, or is there someone who would like to move the minutes? Representative Wharf, seconded by Senator Pappas. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, the minutes are good to go, so I guess we can move on. So we're going to move into the, we're going to move into the first round, or the first item on the list, which is review of property tax data request for everyone in the room. There were, I guess everyone in the room, including all the people here in the front table, there was a lot of data requested and a lot of information that the LSO has put together. And by the way, thank you, LSO. I know you worked hard getting a lot of that data together. And but what we're going to do, there's a significant amount of data. A lot of this were requests that were made in the last meeting related to the topics from the last meeting. And some of it is very relevant to some of the draft bills and things that we've passed there. So what we're going to do is we'll probably narrow this down to some of the data that is most relevant to the conversations today and related to the draft bills that we might hit. And then some of the data we will not go over directly. So you guys, for those of you who are interested. One other item, just more of an announcement, or at least something to let people in the room know. As I think most people noticed, there were a large number of, or I wouldn't say a large number, but there were several draft bills, and some of them fairly complex. And we had maybe an hour or an hour and a half on the agenda at the end of the day tomorrow. What I want to let everybody in the room know, and people online who are listening, that tomorrow we will do our best to try to address the draft bills, see if the committee has any additional amendments to those draft bills, and we will do that. But what I don't believe we will have sufficient time for tomorrow is to really give most of those draft bills. If we have sufficient time to give a full public comment on one or two of the bills, then we will certainly do that. But if we run out of time giving, which I believe we probably will, giving the public comment sufficient time on those bills, we are likely to move all of those bills to the third meeting is what we'll probably do, because I don't want any of those bills going through without sufficient vetting from the committee and the departments, as well as public comment. So I just wanted people to understand that on most of those draft bills, your last opportunity for public comment will not be tomorrow. Most of them will have opportunity for public comment then on them tomorrow, unless for some reason we were truly able to vet a couple of the easier ones. But for the most part, I think we're going to push them all to the third meeting and do a quality job of giving everyone an input. So anyway, we'll move on to this first bill. Again, review of property tax, the property tax data requests. I know LSO put together a good summary of some of the data requests, and then I think we'll move into a couple of the probably more important items that we're going to hit. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
might I
Representative Lane.
request that we start with the obsolescence report reviews?
Thank you, Representative Lean. I think what we might do right before obsolescence, we'll make it the first kind of big data dive. What we'll let LSDO do, if you're okay with it, we'll let them maybe do this summary this summary of some of these bullets. Would that be acceptable? Great, thank you. And gentlemen, thank you for bringing this together, and please go ahead and proceed. And if you could just kind of hit your summary, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dalton Quilty, Associate LSO Fiscal Analyst, and Matt Sackett, Senior LSO Fiscal Analyst. So the first thing I want to bring to the committee's attention is the memorandum titled Follow-Up 1, Joint Revenue Interim Committee Questions. I will give a very brief kind of answer to all these questions. Many of these have individualized sections that may go more in depth, but I'll kind of give you guys the top line answers for everything to keep it quick. So the first question was, what are the total revenue collections from gambling? How is it distributed? So this is broken up by the type of gaming. So looking at lottery revenue, we had $40.9 million. $22 million was distributed in prizes, $11.7 million on expenses, and $6 million was transferred to local governments. Parimutuel gambling, which includes historic horse racing, that's actually the bulk of the receipts received. The total handles or bets was $2.1 billion. $8.5 million went to the Breeder Award, $19.1 million to cities and towns, $5.4 million was sent to the Gaming Commission, and $8.3 million was put in the Legislative Stabilization Reserve account. Skill-based gaming had a total handle of $127 million. $1.5 million went to counties, $1.3 million to local governments, $623,000 to the Gaming Commission, and $2.8 million to the SFP. Online sports betting totaled $209.6 million. $300,000 to the Department of Health for to distribute to counties to fund gambling abuse and treatment programs, and $1.1 million was sent to the general fund. Now, flowcharts of all these distributions are available on Appendix 1 as its own appendixes. So there's a whole nother memorandum kind of at the back that goes over all of gaming in a ton of detail. So if you do have any questions on that, just let me know. The second question was, what is the tax rate on electricity generated from nuclear reactors and how is it distributed? Now, nuclear energy does have a tax in place. Production is taxed.
Mr. Quilty, fairly quickly, hit the next two items very quickly. The nuclear reactor piece and the solar energy piece. What I think that these are going to get discussed, I think, in more detail, probably in the electric energy section as well. That will be in there. So if you'd hit these fairly quickly, I want to move through them pretty fast. Thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Chairman, on nuclear energy, it's taxed at $5 a megawatt hour. There are some exemptions in place for advanced nuclear reactors that we can get into later. Solar actually does not have a tax distribution or anything set into place. So we have no collections or anything or any form of collections on solar energy. Going to question 4, what is the total amount of state lands owned and held to benefit schools? Currently, the state owns 3.5 million surface acres and 3.9 million mineral acres. 86% of these are managed to benefit public schools, and the remaining 14% go to benefit specific institutions and public funding like Boys and Girls Schools, Wyoming Training School, Wyoming State Hospital, etc. 5, how has sales and use tax collection changed in the past 3 years? So between fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2025, the state saw its share of sales and use tax collections grow by 10.4%. Now, this does come with a caveat to some degree, that this includes taxes levied by counties that could be for temporary things like a hospital construction. And these could distort the growth of those figures. There is available in the memorandum as table 1 showing the 3 years requested. Question 6, how are motor vehicle fees and taxes distributed? Specifically, why are motor vehicle fees and taxes directed towards education? Vehicle fees are collected by county treasurers and then distributed in a manner similar to property taxes by the exact same thing. And that's the reason that some of it ends up in education, is because it's treated very similarly to property tax. It all kind of gets bulked together. Number 7, what is the history of severance tax rate changes? In 1969, the legislature first levied severance taxes. The original rate was 1% for all valuable minerals or deposits. There is a full severance tax history in terms of the rate changes, as well as some of the legislation around it attached as Appendix 2 and Appendix 3. And Appendix 4 is the statutory changes related to that. What are the total federal funds received by the state by agency? This is included as Table 2 in the appendices. The grand total was $1.594 billion in federal funds received by individual agencies. Number 9, what is the total of sales and use tax license fees and interest deposited in the general fund? Total licensing fees to the general fund were $2.4 million, including $360,000 for license fees and $2.04 million for sale and use interest. What is the total of sales and use tax penalties deposited to county public school funds? Total sales and use tax penalties collected and deposited in the county school fund totaled $3.3 million in fiscal year 2024. And that kind of covers that first memorandum. And then the second one is simply looking at other revenues and the total for the state. There's a table included in it. And the other funds.
Let me stop just a second. On those first basically 10 bullets, were there any topics that or any questions the committee might have that you want to ask? I think most of those were a good summary, but Co-Chairman McEwen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back on some of the gambling revenues and how that's distributed, do we know what the expense for gambling addiction really is or what they need? Is there any data on that other than a swag for a number? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Quilty, please.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any information on that number. The memorandum attached as an appendix was written by an associate at LSO. I'd assume the Department of Health may be the best people to ask about the cost of gambling addiction and whatnot, but I can do some research if that's something that the committee would be interested in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Quilty. Any other follow-up, sir? Okay, perfect. Any other questions, guys, on those main bullets there?
Sorry, Mr. Did you want, sorry, Mr. Through the chair, Senator McEwen, did you want us to look through and try and find you some numbers on that?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
yeah,
Co-Chair.
definitely. My concern is at another meeting, they've lumped all addiction into one topic, and most of it's substance abuse. And do we really have a gambling addiction problem or not? I assume we think we do because we're going to fund something. But once again, we don't know really what we're funding. So yeah, if you could give me some numbers on that, I'd sure appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Co-Chairman. Mr. Quilty, thank you for putting that on our list. I appreciate that. All right. Any other questions on any of the other topics or that topic? All right. Mr. Quilty, are we kind of through your main sections here, or do you want question for the committee really more than anything on this one? I found the going through the other funds documentation was valuable. Do people have any questions on that one? There's a lot of data there, and that I'm not sure exactly that is as critical for this meeting and what we're going through in this meeting, but I am inclined on some of these data items, if the committee agrees. I think some of these data items would be valuable for us to get a deeper education, maybe in the third meeting, if the agenda and time permits. If that's something that appeals to the committee, I think I would like to at least ask LSO that we consider this for the agenda. Of course, we'll work that in between the meetings, but I do think a lot of these data items, we'll try to prioritize them and try to include maybe a deeper dive on some of these. And then, so if there's no other questions from the committee, then I think we've at least narrowed that one down. Now, I'm going to step into a couple of other data requests I know that were made and that I think are very relevant to this meeting that probably affect the department. And as Representative Lean has requested, I think the obsolescence report review is interesting to the folks, the committee. And so if that, unless there's something else that the committee's concerned about, I would probably like to start with those. And then I think that right after that, I know another data request that was made that would be valuable for everyone. And again, I'm kind of asking it of the committee, as I think maybe after the obsolescence reports, I know there's an exemption, some exemption impact data. I think that's valuable for the committee to hear as well. And I know that was requested, a lot of data was provided. So unless the committee, any discussion from the committee or concerns, if there are none, we'll press with obsolescence reports and then maybe we'll dive into some of the exemption impact data. Thank you. Oh, Co-Chairman McKeown, please.
Yeah, I like where you're starting, but I think we need to hit the pollution and fire control exemptions before we get into the overall thing. Obsolescence, pollution, fire control.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. And actually, I would agree. Maybe we should kind of include all of that together with the obsolescence reports. Let's go through all of that together. Mr. Gale, if that's acceptable, we'll try to hit obsolescence reports as well as the fire and pollution control stuff all together, if that's acceptable with you, sir. And Mr. Gale, thank you for being here. And sir, you have the floor, and I'm sure we have a few questions on this one, but this is great. Thank you. Please proceed.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ken Gill, Property Tax Division of the Department of Revenue. So starting off with the obsolescence reports, I'm not really sure report is the right name, but I did pull data in an aggregate fashion for both economic obsolescence and functional obsolescence. And you'll see those two that were handed out this morning. One, they're pretty simple. They look like this, pretty big font. The first one, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, looking at the functional obsolescence. So what I did, I wrote a query. Of course, we know obsolescence is also part of the market value. And when the analysis and the appraisal is done, obsolescence is included in that and really not generally a figure that you can look at just individually. However, there are certain properties that have more obsolescence added to them due to some functional or economic obsolescence on that specific property. So pulling that in an aggregate by county, and then you can see these numbers here are in fair market value, not assessed value. So it's full value. So this is the amount per county that has been exempted on individual accounts, and exempted is the wrong word, added to the individual accounts. So this is obsolescence, functional obsolescence in this case, that's been added to these accounts. I also did the same for economic obsolescence. And I will, Mr. Chairman, I only chose commercial and industrial. Listening to the meeting, that seemed to be, from your comments at the last meeting, that seemed to be what you were looking for. So I can pull it for other properties, obviously. We can do that. And if there's anything further on that we want on obsolescence, I'm willing to work with Representative Lean, and we can get together and pull specific data that she would like to see.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Any questions from the committee? Representative Lean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for writing the Corey to pull these. I really appreciate it. And the way I understand obsolescence is that there also is a third leg of the stool being all the state granted obsolescence for our state-run properties. So at this time, I'd like to request that we get those numbers for the committee as well.
Okay.
My follow-up to that, Mr. Chairman, would be who issues these obsolescence and what kind of training do they receive prior to putting the obsolescence or the devaluation on the assessment?
Mr. Gill?
Mr. Chairman, that is a really good question, Representative Lean. That would be the appraiser appraising the property. So whether it be a state assessed property that is appraised at the Department of Revenue, or whether it be at the local level at the assessor. So that would be the appraiser that would do that. When it comes to training, Mr. Chairman, yes. All of the appraisers, I could have.
And it's teasing you, the fact it's green and you're still not listening to you. So
Batteries.
We'll try that again. There you go. So as far as education, yes, the appraisers in Wyoming, they're required to be certified through the state of Wyoming, and the Department of Revenue conducts classes year-long for not only assessors and their staff. Also, my division, they go to education courses on a regular basis. So yes, they are all certified. All 23 county assessors are certified. Many of their staff are certified, and everyone at the Department of Revenue in the Property Tax Division of the Appraisal Service Group are also certified, including myself. So yeah, we do put on a lot of education across the state on a yearly basis. In fact, right now, as we speak, there's a class going on the income approach to value here in Casper, and pretty well attended from what I hear. And I even have some staff at that class this week also.
Representative Lean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the follow-up. Thank you for that. My next question would be, could you give us a very specific example of what obsolescence or devaluation of the assessment may look like on an industrial unit?
Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, top of my head on an industrial type of asset, there may be a obsolescence applied because it's not being used. Maybe it's sitting idle. It's not creating an income. That would be one type of obsolescence. Maybe it's out of date. They still hold the asset, but it's a 1996 computer running Windows XP and not very valuable to the company. So that would be a functional obsolescence there in that type of case. So it's going to vary by asset, but typically if it's not contributing its full value that it should contribute to the entire property, there would be obsolescence to that asset.
Representative Lane, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for explaining that to me. In comparison of a functional obsolescence to those of residential properties, the way I just heard you say that if it's sitting idle and not creating income, could that same obsolescence then be applied to residential properties? For instance, I have a 5-bedroom home where I've had 3 children graduate and move on. And so now I have a portion of my home that merely sits idle. Could I now apply that to residential properties?
Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know, I think it broke out again. We have to change mics.
I'm gonna have to steal the other mic for you there, brother. Now that one over there, it wants to go off and on and
Yeah.
really torment you, so.
Yeah, it's blinking, Mr. Chairman. So, I mean, that's a great question. I don't know if that would be additional obsolescence. I think the market would take care of any obsolescence that house would have. Additional obsolescence, if every house in the neighborhood has five bedrooms, a little different, because residential typically in a regular single family residential property is not typically an income producing property. So I think your example would be a little odd in that case, and I think the market would drive the value of those additional rooms not being used.
Mr. Gill, question I have is, so you've brought these numbers in, fair market value numbers. One of the things I think that would be valuable for the committee, and I think it'd be valuable for us to see, what does this look like in the tax income impact? I think that would be valuable if that can be broken down at that level. Is that something you're comfortable maybe giving us some additional details on? I do think that would be valuable. We're looking at, I mean, here we're looking at maybe 900 million-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. And we'd just like to understand, but that's fair market value, of course. So once you break that down, it's going to be a much smaller tax impact number. And I just want to make sure we understand how that all stacks up. And then another question I have, if that's, I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't be inserting myself into this, but I did want to ask this additional question are the obsolescence reports reviewed by anybody? Is there a review, a process to verify? Is there anything like that in our processes and procedures?
Mr. Chairman, to your first question, can I break these down? Yes, I did not use assessed value in these because, of course, industrial is at 11.5% and commercial is at 9.5%. So I did not break them down that way. And then, of course, we have an average mill levy, which, Mr. Chairman, I just sent you the most recent average mill levies in the state. So yes, I can break those down to an assessed value and estimate of taxes based on the average mill levy within that county.
Thank you, Ms. Gill.
Your second question, are they reviewed? Yeah, I know at the Department of Revenue, absolutely. We look at every property every year. We appraise every property as of January 1 every year. So yes, I think we review any obsolescence that would be included in those appraisals. At the local level, coming from the local level, absolutely. Something that we would look at on a regular basis to make sure that if we had applied additional obsolescence to something, whether it could be a detraction from the property, it might actually be an addition to the property in some cases, depending upon the situation. I believe assessors review those on an annual basis just to make sure that something hasn't been added or dropped off over the past year.
Senator Ide, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Field, I'm glad to hear you were doing some training on income approach to value. I've been having to deal with that quite a bit. You know, commercial properties, multi-tenant office buildings, no comps for 30 years. Income or cost approach doesn't really reflect a true value of, 70, 80-year-old buildings, replacement cost, less depreciation. So on your income approach, you take net operating income, you show your tax returns, so you're not lying. And then they take a capitalization rate, which is a little bit of an arbitrary number because it moves around from market to market, big, strong market, big city. It's hard to find a true capitalization rate to get a value on the income approach with your net operating income. So the crux of my question is, when you have a property that's been vacant for, say, 5 years, and you have a negative income on that property, and the only value you can give it effectively is on an income approach. It's an investor building. It really doesn't have anything to do with replacement cost or market value. It's what it can produce and get a return on investment. So if that's a negative, how do you come to the value on a property that's been long vacant and you're using an income approach that's in the red? How do they arrive at that number? I mean, I know what they arrive at, but I wonder how they get to that, because it's got to be just completely arbitrary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, income approach, so it doesn't start with the NOI, it starts with the potential gross income. So you potentially could rent all those offices out, those apartments, whatever the case may be. You could rent those out. So you have a potential gross income. You know what the market rent is in an area, more than likely. So you have a potential gross income. Then you have typically an adjustment for vacancy. So if there is a vacancy, in some cases, maybe that vacancy adjustment is higher. You know, typically you see most active commercial buildings, the vacancy rate is going to be low. You know, it's going to be that 5 to 8 to 10% of the year. Now, when you look at a hotel vacancy rate, if you're using an income approach on a hotel, that vacancy rate's a lot higher, right? Because not every room is rented every night, you know, in most cases. So you look at vacancy, so that's subtracted out of the potential gross income. So that gives you your effective gross income. And then we take expenses. So you have expenses on the building, whether it be insurance expenses, et cetera, those expenses that you have on a regular basis, upkeep. And of course, it can get a little more complicated. I'm doing a 30,000-foot overview here, but you know, if you replace the roof, well, that's not an expense for 1 year. That roof is expected to last 50 years. So that deduction is going to come out of that roof or out of the expenses over a 50-year basis. You know, I'm just paraphrasing here. After that, now you have the net operating income divided by the capitalization rate, and that is the appraisal using the income approach. Now, the cap rate, to develop a cap rate, you have to know two things, right? You have to know the value of a building or what it's sold for, something like that, and you need to know its income. And it takes there's companies out there that put in a lot of effort to get that information. Okay, what does this building sell for? What's its income? What's this building sell for? What's its income? Let's look at all the retail stores. Let's look at all the office buildings. They're going to do that. And they'll develop those cap rates for an area. Many times it's a region. There are a few appraisers that will develop a cap rate at the local level. So, and I will tell you, coming from my old career, every appraisal that I got on a commercial property, I kept in a file, so I could go back and look at how they developed that cap rate. Absolutely. So, yeah, income approach is one approach to value. We as you know, there's 3 approaches to value, and it's one of those that can be used typically in income producing properties. But one sitting vacant, it is a problem. It is a challenge for an appraiser. Absolutely.
Senator Ide, follow up? All right, very good. Co-Chair McEwen, please.
Just curious if you can give me an idea on, as this obsolescence figures are developed, is it mostly done locally? 50-50, 60-40?
Mr. Gill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, these numbers on these 2 sheets were pulled directly from the CAMA system. So yes, that would be local.
Update? Thank you, Mr. Gill. Other questions on obsolescence report? Representative Riggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Gill. Would that formula, the obsolescence, is that a request by the property owner, or is that a calculation that you guys make based on information you gather? For example, would such a thing like that apply to a non-producing wind turbine farm, for example? Would they make an application because of that ability?
Mr. Chairman, great question. It's not an application process. It's part of the appraisal process. Many times an appraiser isn't not going to know that there is obsolescence on an individual property. You know, the wind turbine, obviously when the appraiser appraises that wind farm, and they give a value, that company may come back and say, hey, we haven't generated any electricity in X amount of years, whatever the case may be. So then the appraiser is going to have to consider that. So usually it's brought to the appraiser's attention by the property owner, but it's not really an application process.
Thank you. And Mr. Gill, I want to expand on that a little bit if you don't mind. How well is that process documented? Are the appraisers, do they document their driving reasons? Is that well documented? Can you go look at each individual case and say, oh, I see why they they did that. So, and I'm going to use the wind turbine as a good example.
Mhm.
Perfect example, you have this situation where a company who owns a bunch of wind turbines says, we haven't generated any power, and say, oh, well, we'll give you an obsolescence. Well, hey, maybe we want to understand, why haven't you generated any power in 5 years, 10 years? And that's a real issue. And quite honestly, in the absence of that being documented, one might argue the obsolescence certainly could be questioned whether it's valid.
Mhm.
Not saying that happened, just kind of curious how that all works. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's a good question. Yeah, I would venture to say anytime someone adds an additional adjustment, whether it be obsolescence, anything to a property, that's going to be well documented. It's going to be well documented at the state level for sure. And I can't speak for all 23 county assessors, obviously, but being a former assessor, the CAMA system had notes where they would keep notes of why something was applied, or maybe they keep them outside the CAMA system. It's hard to say, but I'm fairly certain most appraisers take note of why they did what they did. Many times, if you're looking at a private appraiser, he could end up in court. He's going to need to know that. And even on our mass appraisers, they could end up in a hearing and an appeal. So, and that question could get asked, why did you make this adjustment, whether it be for obsolescence or anything else? So yes, I would think that most people keep everything documented.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Please, co-chair.
Let me qualify this with, it's an absolutely unfair question and a stretch for you to answer for me. But we're talking about wind farms and windmills that aren't working. Are they still collecting subsidies for those windmills that aren't turning? Thank you, Mr. Gill. or
Mr.
Chair.
Gill.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that answer, Co-Chairman. I really don't. I am definitely not a wind farm expert by any means. I can't answer that. I could sure phone a friend probably and see if I can find out, but I don't know the answer to that.
Follow up?
If you would, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Committee, other questions? Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow up on the co-chair's question, do wind turbines get taxed on the income approach?
Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I've never appraised a wind farm, but I am sure that the income approach is definitely considered in the appraisal.
Follow up?
Thank you for that. I'm going to switch gears here and move back to the industrial example that you gave us. You talked about for instance, a computer that has, from 1986 on it. Is there currently in place a property by which we value that, or a scale by which we value that in Wyoming to tax it versus using a depreciation scale through the obsolescence?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry.
Let me rephrase that. Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes,
Your
please.
Marshall and
Representative.
Swift books, they have depreciation scales in them and we use them off of the CAMA system in Wyoming. Could we use those depreciation scales instead of applying an obsolescence via the county assessor through their industrial income?
Mr. Chairman, okay, thank you for clarifying that. The depreciation schedules are being used already. So the obsolescence that's being added is an addition because it doesn't fit that schedule anymore. Or an addition, it could be in certain cases.
Any other questions from the committee? Representative Campbell, you had your hand up at one point. Did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm
Representative
not
Campbell, please.
really sure how to word this, but just to make sure that everything, how often do you guys review your process to where you're ensuring, because things change. So how often do you guys review your process to ensure that you're using best practices?
Mr. Chairman, very good question. So to make sure we're using best practices in modern appraisal, that's our education. I mean, we continue to educate not only our local appraisers, but our state appraisers also. So it's through education, and we're members of associations that get together, talk about different appraisal methods, different methodologies. So yeah, it'd be like, Mr. Chairman, for a terrible example, it'd be like being in a trade, let's say, construction trade, and not keeping up with the modern tools and the modern building practices, that are more cost effective, maybe, kind of like that. We continue to educate ourselves to be the best we can on a yearly basis. So I hope that answers your question.
Quick
Follow-up?
follow-up with that. Do you guys, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you guys have any, when I'm looking at that, it's kind of, you're telling me it's the industry standard. And so as that goes, you stay with the industry. Sometimes Wyoming's industry is a little different than others. Do you guys have any way, do you follow other states, or is there some streamlined process to where we see if we're in balance with our neighboring states? Thank you, sir.
Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, most of us are members of associations out there that are appraisal practice associations and best practice type things. You have to remember, in a time in history, there was a time when the appraisal industry as a whole, whether it be public appraisals or private appraisers, went through some turbulent times. And during those times, a lot of these association and groups came into play to make more standardization and more ethical rules. All of us are required, as an appraiser, we're required to take USPAP, which is an ethics course. And of course, it's a very long book. Our department, we sponsor that class every other year, the update class, and then folks can also take it privately. So it is something that is required every 4 years to take for ethics. And yeah, I believe we try to keep to the standard of other states, and not, obviously laws are different from state to state for appraisal. So we have to follow our laws here in the green books here, but I think the general practice, we try to stay in line with general industry practices.
Senator Ide, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick follow-up on Representative's lien question on how the windmills are appraised, wind turbines, and maybe a little follow-up to, you said you would see what the subsidy situation was on non-active wind turbines. Could you apply what Representative Lean brought up and look and tell us how wind turbines are appraised, whether it's an income approach or how those are valued? Could you add that to Senator McEwen's subsidy question as well?
Mr. Gill. Okay. Okay, very good. Other questions? I'm sorry, I'm probably looking one way down the table here. I don't want to miss anybody down on my left. So, okay, go ahead, Representative Lean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One on my first question is, could you please repeat the name of the course that you said that's the ethics course for every 4 years?
Yes, it's USPAP, and I am sorry, I do not know the acronym right now. It blanks me out, but I will definitely email that to you. I apologize.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. That's okay. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Mr.
Chairman.
Chairman, follow up.
Mm-hmm.
My question would be, does the Department of Revenue have a rule that allows for additional depreciation in addition to using the Marshall and Swift books to be added?
Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, a rule that says exactly like you said it, Representative, probably not. But we do refer to general practices in appraisal and the reconciliation process of looking at all three approaches to value.
Follow up?
Okay, Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. or Mr. Chairman. My next question would be, would you agree that obsolescence does not allow for a fair and equal tax to be applied when a local person is continuously adding and subtracting from assessed values as they see fit?
Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, that's a tough question. Not knowing the exact situation of adding and subtracting and adding and subtracting, I think a good practice would be to, if you are adding obsolescence or making an adjustment, however you want to look at it, to a property, there needs to be a good reason for it. And those reasons need to be well documented.
Right, should we move on to pollution and fire control questions? Is that, committee okay with that? Very good. So we'll move on to the pollution and fire control exemptions, and this one is fair market value as well, I take it. So this would be my same question up front. Sorry, I don't mean to cut anybody off, but I think I would be curious to see what the tax impact is for this one as well. Thank you. And questions from the committee? Representative Riggins, please.
I would just ask Mr. Gill if he could, for our audience and viewers in the internet, if he could explain what the reason for that exemption.
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, first of all, before we even get going into this report here, this 2025 pollution and fire control exemption, there is a correction I need to give you. On Natrona County, you'll see you have zeros. That was a mistake of mine, so I apologize for that. So pollution control, and I'll say it a couple times, is going to be $7,272,230. So that's 7,272,230. And the correction on the fire control is going to be $4,994,920. So 4,994,920. And of course, then, Mr. Chairman, the numbers at the bottom would need to be adjusted for that.
Thank you, Mr. Gill.
So this is pollution and fire control exemption is in our statutes. What it is, and it's typically industrial, pretty much a majority of the pollution and fire control exemptions are on industrial properties. Pollution control would be anything added to the property to control pollutants. No matter what that pollutant be, to control pollutants, it has to be added. So they apply for an exemption. Now, this is an exemption they have to apply for yearly. So this does actually have an application. So on February 15th, their applications are due on a yearly basis. If those applications are not received, they are not allowed to get a pollution control or fire control exemption. Now, when I'm not a heavy industrial expert by any means, but let's say that there's a widget in a refinery that is controlling some type of pollution. But also that same asset is creating a byproduct that is sold. So maybe that asset is not 100% exempt. Maybe only part of it is exempt, the pollution control part, but the byproduct creation is not exempt. So it's not 100 to 100% exempt in all cases. So, and fire control, that's fire suppression. That is not fire alarms. So the alarm on the wall, the smoke detector, if you will, it's not exempt from taxation, but the suppression is. So and they have to apply for that on a yearly basis also.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Or Senator Ide?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm backing up just a little, but I wanted to get this out before we move on. On the turbine thing, could you add to that how many wind turbines in Wyoming that we, I'd like to have a number, just see what the total is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I know of a website that is perfect for that, and I will send you the link personally. And it is a nice interactive website, so I will get that to you.
And Mr. Gill, if these requests, if I know sometimes you're kind of pointing a particular individual's asking, but if you just make sure the whole committee sees all of that data, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Would you wish that I just go through LSO and that way they can make sure?
That would be great, whatever is convenient, but yeah, just please make sure the entire committee sees it. I think it'd be valuable for everybody to see all this data. It's great. Even for the people who are not digging in on this, it's great information and it's really stuff we should all understand. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions, Representative Lean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When it comes to fire and pollution control, I've had some time to do some math here. We've got a total taxable value of $2,430,910. Oh, let's see. Let me start again. $2,430,910,303. When we tax that at a tax rate of 9.5%, our assessed value is then $230,936,478. With a statewide mill average levy of 70 we're going to take 70 as the average, that it now gives us $170,163,721 that is lost to the state and a benefit to industry, in addition to the obsolescence reports that we can, or in addition to the obsolescence or depreciating value that our assessors can put on their books. So my question is, where in the statute or in rule is it that we can give pollution and fire control exemptions to industry?
It is,
Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Oh.
It is in Title 35. I don't know the exact number right off the top of my head, but it is in Title 35, I believe. And Representative Lean, I'm happy to send you that statutory reference on that. So it might also be in Title 39, 11105. There might be a reference to it, but I think it references back to Title 35. So I will get those and get those to the whole committee, Chairman.
Other questions from the committee on, well, any of these, obsolescence or pollution and fire control? I've kind of lumped them together anyway, so any other questions the folks have?
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Oh,
if
sorry.
there's no other
Mr. Gill,
questions,
please.
these are exemptions. As you know, in 3911-105, we now have almost 50 exemptions in property tax, with including the ones that just were passed in the past two sessions. So if you go through 3911-105 and look at all those exemptions, each one of those is an exemption. And in all honesty, the pollution and fire control, we can track that because they have to apply for it. I guess if they apply for it, we can track that. But some of the other exemptions that we have in Title 39, 11105, we can't track, like churches, like schools, like government buildings, et cetera, which I know is a topic later, but we don't track those. These we can track. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. And I think that's an important question. The issue of tracking some of this data is going to come up a couple of times today in numerous areas. My guess is it'll happen in the whole sales tax and use exemption space as well. I do think that's a hot topic. I don't know that I could sit here and really direct that immediately, but we may want to talk about that more deeply in preparation for the third meeting, because I do think there's some education for the committee on that, where that process is robust, where it's not, and where it could be improved, let's say. That's a discussion I think we would at least like to move to, but I don't want to get hung up on that at this moment. But I do think that's a very important question that I would at least throw out to the committee. I think it's worth the committee noodling this and saying, how do we feel about something like that? And if we, what do we feel about understanding the breadth of that issue and understanding what could possibly be done to improve it? And I guess we would defer largely to you, but just a thought that and thank you for bringing that up. I think it was a very important topic.
Mr. Chairman, we'd be happy to participate.
Thank you. Representative Lean,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
sorry.
You said that they have to apply for the fire and pollution control. Can you tell me how often that application occurs?
Mr. Gill.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, that's a yearly basis by February 15th. Now, if they applied the year before, the assessor is required to send them an application on a yearly basis. So, and I believe that that date escapes me right now, but I want to say it's around October 1st or October 15th. But it's in October. They send the applications to the industry that has applied before. The industry then has to have those back by February 15th. If they are not back by February 15th, it is very clear in our rules, and I believe clear in statute, that they will not receive that exemption for that year.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Representative Riggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Gale. These pollution controls, I mean, I'm kind of curious, are those doable by, I mean, are they proprietary, private information? I'm only wondering because I'd be interested to see what examples of pollution control are versus take pollution testing, which is a service provider rather than a piece of equipment that you would add as part of your overall cost of your facility or growth. Catalytic converters and all kinds of different types of emission controls are part of that process. So, you know, if you look through the list, you'll see how big a number it is for some of these companies and some of these counties. I should say they're huge, right? So I was just kind of interested in what that list looks like a little bit and what type of controls we're talking about. And that's why I was wondering if they were observable and you could kind of get an idea of what those types of things are. Secondly, so every time the EPA comes with a new rule, we lose some property tax because of this. Generally speaking, and new controls are required every time they come out with a new rule, generally speaking. So,
Mr. Gill, can you speak to that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Riggins, yes, they are confidential, and I don't even have access to that data. That is at the local level. So they are confidential. I'm sure that working with our local partners, we could probably put together some kind of generic list, you know, that doesn't tie back to an individual company. So I'm sure we probably could put something together like that. The second question, the EPA passes something. I don't really honestly know if I have an opinion or an answer on that, Representative. I guess it could be. It could be.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And following up on Representative Riggins' question, that is earlier when I asked you on best practices, I think that Representative Riggins' question gets more to the point. When we have regulations that change that require technology to keep up with environmental policies, whatever, that happens pretty quick to where we have to have this for this particular industry or this is coming and going. How does that factor in? Does that make sense, sir?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I believe it does make sense if I'm following your question. So, you know, times change quickly and they have to get this new equipment very quickly. When do they get the exemption? If I could paraphrase that. Property is valued as of January 1 every year. So it probably would always be a year in the rears. It would probably be a year behind.
Follow up,
Quick-
Kevin?
Quick
Or
follow-up,
Representative
Mr.
Campbell?
Chairman. Would it behoove us to set a time frame to where we set a standard to where every 3 years, whatever, that we do a review process with that to make sure, I mean, we want to be competitive. We want to make sure that we're in the game and we want to make sure that our taxation is current with how things are going. Does that make sense? We want to maximize our revenue from what the standards best practices change year to year. So we want to make sure that we're in line with best practices, but we want to make sure that we're not cutting the state's throat or missing opportunity from that. Does that make sense?
Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm following, we work on a tax year. So typically for, let's say 2025, a company reporting equipment, or in this case, we were talking about pollution control, but let's just say in general reporting equipment, they're reporting assets that they've gained from the previous year. So we're really always 1 year behind. If they acquired that asset in January of 2024, they're not reporting that to us until March 1 of 2025. So, and we're not actually appraising that until the fourth Monday in April, and we're not actually collecting any tax on that until November 10th and May 2026. So yeah, we're always a little bit behind.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not explaining myself. Let's go to wind turbines. Let's say that there was a lot of the way that a wind turbine is judged in 2020 may not be the way it's judged in 2025. So how do we is there a time period when huge pieces of equipment, when large things like that do very abrupt or almost they change very, very fast. So if we're taxing this wind farm at 19 or 2020 values, and now we're in 2025 and all these exemptions and everything, there's a whole bunch of things that just happened. Now that valuation system is very, very different from where it was. So what are we doing to ensure best practices to stay current with the times? Is that a better understanding, sir?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Gill.
that is, yes, I know exactly what you're asking now, or a little better.
Thank you.
We appraise property every year. So we don't use 2020's value. In fact, we start with a zero value every year. We don't look at the previous year's value. Now, I won't say that's verbatim because we have to look at the previous year's value on one of the exemptions that we have. But typically, we don't look at the previous year's value. So we are going to be, if there's been any additions to that turbine in your case, if the blades have been changed, that's going to be adjusted for. Absolutely. So we're not going to use what was reported in 2020. We really don't care about that anymore. We care about what is currently being used and in place.
All right. Any other questions, Representative Lucas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gill, I just wanted to follow up very quickly on a question that Representative Riggins had earlier. So we don't know what type of pollution control devices or systems or equipment is being exempted. How do you know the values? Do your folks assess those exemption values, or does the business? I'm sorry if this has happened. It just clicked with me a moment ago. So yeah, just clarify that very, very briefly for me, please.
Mr. Gill.
Absolutely. So the appraiser is appraising those pieces of equipment and what they value at, and then the company then applies for the exemption on that equipment.
So follow up.
Yeah, Representative Lucas.
Thank you. So it's been a few years since I've done one of these reports myself, but I know that we would say Diebold safe, this model, blah, blah. And so you don't get that level of detail at all, like because I'm kind of curious, like Representative Riggins was, on just what some of these companies are using, because it seems like a lot of money. So just a comment on that. I just have one more then.
Representative Lucas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more housekeeping than anything, and please forgive me if I seem a little cranky over it, but I noticed that a good bit of the materials that your department is provided in an image format and not in a text format. So I can't text search when I was looking to find some of these when we first got them. If you could do these in a text format, it would be so helpful and time saving.
Thank you. Co-Chair McEwen, please.
And, and is it possible for us to get these in a PDF? So I
Mi-
understand that, but I mean on the emails, if we can get a PDF, we can open it up, play with it ourselves, is what I'm really asking.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, if the committee would like them in a PDF or any other form, absolutely. Just request that of me, like Representative Lucas just did. Yeah, we can provide them in different formats for sure. So absolutely. Whether it be PDF or Excel or text or whatever.
Co-Chair McEwen, please. Thank you, Mr. Gill.
I'm just not good with a phone and little tiny text message stuff, so I'd like it on my computer. Thank you.
Co-Chairman, I understand that completely.
All right, any other questions, or let's try to wrap this section up a little bit, but please, Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up on Representative Riggins' questions. In 3913-102Q, we can have access to those, and I would like to request that we send out notice by September 12th to these companies, and that this information be to the committee no later than September 30th, so that we have adequate time to review what is happening within our industry and what is happening within our residential taxing process to make sure that everything is going to be fair and equitable across the board. Mr. Chairman, may I follow up with a question?
Yes, Representative Lean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Guile, my question is, why is it not public information for industry on what tax exemptions they have when it is public information for residential property taxes and what is being depreciated or assessed at fair market value on your homes?
Gill.
Mr. Chairman, that's how it's written, and typically this is personal property, Representative Lane, that is exempted in the pollution and fire control. It's considered business personal property, and as you know, business personal property is held confidential not only by the county assessor but by the state of Wyoming Department of Revenue. Now, notifying every property owner of releasing their personal property in the state of Wyoming. I'm gonna have to look at that, Representative Lean, and see if that's even something feasible that we can do. And I'll get back with you, and maybe we pick a type of industry or something like that. I don't know that the department can, because we don't hold all of the data. I don't know that we can honestly contact each one of those companies. So, because we have local partners in that too. So let me look into that, Representative Lean, and maybe work with you to see what we can do for you for a list.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for getting back to me on that. Just a quick question for you. There's approximately 900 energy companies with all kinds of benefit that they receive with these depreciation scales. And if you average out what they're getting in return, it's approximately $189,000 each company in depreciation scales. And so I'm curious to know, why is that private information to the company when the state is the one that is ultimately losing money on this?
Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, I'm not following the depreciation scales. I'm not sure what you're referring to there.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Lean.
just to clarify on the pollution and fire control exemptions
Okay.
particularly.
Mr. Gill.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, the amount of exemption, it is public because it's on the State Board of Equalization's abstract. So it is public, the amount, not the list of the type of equipment.
All right. Co-Chairman, you had a follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I sort of misspoke. It's not a PDF I want, it's the Excel sheet. And if I get that in a text format, I got to figure out how to get it from my phone to my computer, which 98% of everybody in this room knows how to do very easily. Unfortunately, I'm one of the 2% And is the Excel format available?
Yes, anything I will do. I will get an Excel for you. And Co-Chair McEwen, I just asked my grandkids. So they're the ones that help me with that kind of stuff. So
I have a granddaughter who's about 11.
Yep.
And she's way ahead of me.
All right, I think, oh, Representative Ward, finally somebody to my left.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just think for clarification, maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that Director Gill had said you can release the kind of the classes of, or the information that's there, just not tied to the business. Did you not say that? That we could get that
Mr.
list?
Gill?
Mr. Chairman, I think Representative Worf, I think we could probably put together a type of assets that are being exempted and types of exemptions without identifying the companies, more in an aggregate type situation. Yes, sir.
Okay, I think that's a start in the right direction. At least then we can see kind of what types of items or properties being exempted, just so the committee knows that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Worf. If the committee's okay, I think I'd like to move on to, I know you have, I think they're your numbers, the exemption impact numbers. And I think that's next. Don't think I'm stepping out of school too far here. If people are done with these other topics, but I think that's another area that would be important for us to hear. And I would like to kind of keep this as brief as we can. A lot of these numbers I think we're fairly familiar with, but if you could hit these fairly quickly, we'll get to questions and we'll see if we can't make sure there's not any other major data issues to discuss and to dive into. Thank you, Mr. Gill.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. So that will be the sheet labeled 2025 assessed value residential exemptions. All right, if everyone has it, this is the residential exemptions that have been passed the last two sessions. So, so you're all pretty familiar with these exemptions. The first column, obviously, the jurisdiction. The second column, Wyoming statute 3911-105A 43 and 44, AKA the 4% cap. Now, if you'll recall, in 2024, the cap only applied to the dwelling, the single-family dwelling. In 2025, the cap, the 4% cap, or the exemption above 4%, however you want to explain it, applied not only to the single-family dwelling, but it applied to the associated land. So that is both numbers for these figures on this. That's the very first column. The homeowner's exemption, better known as Senate File 69, which was the 25% exemption on all single-family residential structures across the state, 3911-105A 45. That is the 25% in 2025. Now, keep in mind, the law that this body passed in 2025 session, in 2026, this law now is only owner-occupied single-family residential structures, so, and associated land. So it's the only owner-occupied in 2026, should that law stand. Of course, there is a bill in front of this committee right now, or a draft in front of this committee that would take that away. So if it should stand, I would expect those numbers would go down a little bit, obviously from, well, we know that in the state of Wyoming, approximately 72% of homes are owner occupied. The third column there is long-term homeowners exemption. You'll remind you that was passed in the 2024 session. That one there is a 50% exemption on the single family up to 4 family dwelling and up to 35 acres of associated land. You can see the numbers there that was exempted. There were over 32, and I apologize, I don't have that number right in front of me, but there were over 32,000 applications that were granted statewide. So 32,000 households received a 50% exemption on their home and their associated land up to 35 acres. And then in that next column, that is the average mill levy from 2024. I do have 2025s now. In fact, they just got to me on Monday, and I just have not been able to update this sheet as we were traveling for other committees. And then, of course, you take the exempt value times the mill levy, and that's the estimated tax dollars exempted per county. And that would be all three exemptions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Gill on these numbers? Representative Senator, did you, oh, Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, when you're speaking with your assessors and you hear feedback from them, have they had any challenges in implementing any of these exemptions?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's the next topic on the agenda for sure. And I definitely would defer to the assessors, and because they are the boots on the ground and how they dealt with the applications and the multiple folks coming in, the phone calls and the questions. So if I could defer to the assessors, that would be great.
Other questions on this data? I know you had, there was another sheet in there that kind of did the 2024 compared, well, maybe I've got the wrong one here.
Yes, sir, Mr.
It had a
Chairman.
24 versus 25. I don't know if we need to go into that deeply, but at least for the committee, make sure you take a look at that. You get a good feel for the 24 to 25 comparisons in that table as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just direct you to the bottom right-hand corner. Total assessed value, that's going to be state and local. Total assessed value from 24 to 25 is down 4.147 billion.
And that's a total assessed value. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Versus, let's see, sorry, I'm looking at those numbers too and trying to get my brain around all this as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's taxable value, correct? Or assessed value.
So you say it's down 4.1 billion. Just curious, I'm looking at some other numbers. I guess I'll have to go, I'll probably try to go into that with you with more detail. I see. Oh, I see.
So, Mr. Chairman, maybe if it helps.
I understand a little bit better the numbers and
Okay.
what you're doing there because I'm sorry, I was looking within the year 2025 and I was trying to understand the difference. So basically, within 2025, I was trying to do a before and after comparison. I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at the 24 number. I understand it now. Thank you. Other questions on these numbers? And this delta is 4% cap, Senate File 69, for lack of a better term, and long-term homeowner. Yes.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Yes, Representative or Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gill. Can that 32,000 applications on the long-term homeowners, do you have off the top of your head a percentage of the total homeowners in the state and what percentage this 32,000 would be, just out of curiosity? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, not off the top of my head, but we know that approximately there's 175,000 owner-occupied homes in Wyoming. And then we're getting that from census and other numbers like that. So about 175,000. So if you take the 32,000 divided by the 175. Yep.
Okay, other questions? All right, so we'll kind of end questions on that. I think for the most part, this is just data. I don't know if there's really a public comment in here, so we're going to kind of move on. But a question for the committee more than anything, and this was where I wanted to make sure we were clear. Are there any other of these data areas we want to address before we move on? I think if not, we'll move on and we'll actually try to be what's that? Very good. What we'll do, if there are, committee, anything else that on these data numbers that you want to address? Mr. Anderson, please.
Mr. Chairman, I would note, I think there are some people online that wanted to offer some public comments, so.
On these, in this data area?
I believe so, Mr.
Okay, very good. Then I guess I will do that. We'll open it up. I think a lot of this data is, a lot of the public comments not going to be specifically related to data. It's going to be on some of the broader topics. Representative Lean.
Mr. Chairman, before we open public comment, would it be possible to ask a couple questions about the other funds and the severance taxes?
Sure, we can do that. So Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if it's for LSO or for the department themselves, but my question is, when we're talking about the severance tax change, the state reduced coal severance tax by 0.5% last year, and then the federal government just gave them a very nice reduction as well. So I'm curious if anybody can speak to the impacts that stands to have on the income to the state.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have those numbers, but
Mr. Quillen, please.
Mr. Chairman, so with the new reduction in FMRs, federal mineral royalties, they were reduced by about 44% specifically on coal. The ballpark number that's been tossed around is about $50 million to the state that'll cost in terms of our severance tax collections from us being reduced. It could be a little bit higher depending on how much coal we actually end up pulling out of the ground. It's taxed as soon as it's severed, so it really does depend on how much we pull out, but 50 million's a rough ballpark.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Gill.
I don't know if it would behoove you or if you would want, there was one other program on property tax, and it was the property tax refund program. And I don't know if you would like the director to maybe address the property tax refund program and the refunds that we did for 2024 taxes at this time, or if you would like that later.
Mr. Gill, if we can do that fairly quickly, that'd be great.
Director Fanning will be up. He has all those numbers.
Perfect. We'll go through that pretty quick and just make sure people understand. It's an important program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Fanning.
Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the committee, and before you for the first time, Brett Fanning, the Director of the Department of Revenue. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I did have these figures compiled on Tuesday before we left for a different legislative meeting. And so I just wanted to let the committee know that we had 15,390 applications for our property tax refund program. This is a program, as been noted before, that has grown extensively over the past few years. So 15,390 applications. As of right now, we have already refunded 13,990 applicants at $14.7 million. So that is the refund program right now. And it's important to note as well, we did reject 1,341 applications, primarily due to over the income limit as per statute. So we did reject 1,300 of those. And we have 58 that are still outstanding where we've requested additional information from the applicant saying, hey, we're missing fill in the blank data set. And so we've got 58 of those. And then we've got 56 left to refund. So outside of the 58 where we're missing information and 56 where we've had additional questions, happy to report that the Department of Revenue has essentially completed our property tax refund program for this year almost a month early. And so I'm happy to report that as well. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for any questions.
And what was the total refund? I'm sorry.
Yep, great question. I'll give you the exact figure. So it's 14 comma 751 comma 073.41. So 14.7 million. And that is with a 100 or so outstanding.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Any questions? If not, we'll move on fairly quickly, but thank you for that. And thank you for bringing that up. That was an important one to hit. And I think then in this case, we want to take a quick break. I think maybe if there is public comment on the numbers, which is a hard public comment, but what we might do is just take a quick 10-minute break. That'd be okay for everybody. And then we'll come back and we'll take public comment on this section and then we'll move on to the other section. Thank you. Back in 10, please. Getting back to order, everyone, let's bring the meeting back to order and let's get moving on, the follow-up and public comments coming up. Do we have, at this point, did we have any other, LSO departments or any other group that wanted to speak briefly? I'd like to speak to these numbers very briefly if we need to. I think a lot of the conversations, we'll probably having them when we go into draft bills and some of those kind of things. So if you would please just keep your conversations here brief and focused on kind of the numbers. For the most part, this section was designed for largely informational. But if you have questions or comments, we'll open up for public comment and fill the table, and let's move quickly. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dixie Huxtable, Converse County Assessor, and I have with me a colleague, Assessor from Fremont County. We just wanted to be here to answer any questions that you had. We heard some of the comments during the presentation from Mr. Gill, and it sounded like some of that was directed maybe to local county assessors. So we're here to answer any of those questions that anyone may have. And to just make a couple of comments, I can give the statutes where some of those exemptions are, but I think you guys can get that from the LSO, certainly the pollution and fire suppression. The reason those are granted is because they're in the statutes currently, and we are required to grant those if they apply and have appropriate application information. So my county, for one, has both the fire and the pollution, so I can certainly go in depth as to what kind of equipment we're talking about. Certainly, personal property is confidential. It's a self-reporting state, so they report that equipment to us, and that stuff is confidential. Therefore, I am under the understanding that the application for those exemptions is confidential, but in an aggregate form or general form, I could certainly help with some of that information. As well as I also have functional and economic obsolescence in my county, and I could probably give a couple of examples of how that works for us in my county. If you so desired, if you want to skip that and go on to something else, we're sure happy to just answer any questions that you may have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Assessor Huxtable. And I'm going to, before I ask questions from the committee, I do think that you can add some detail to this for the committee. And I don't know how urgent it is in this meeting right at this moment, but I'll open up a question for the committee. And I would say it would be valuable for us to maybe understand at your level some of those details. So maybe we can discuss that maybe in more detail outside the committee. But at this point, let's open it up to the committee for questions. And then I would like to connect with you, and let's just see, is there some additional knowledge we can add to the team that maybe we get into the third meeting so we get that data in front of the committee?
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you so much, Ms. Huxtable. Any questions? Representative Campbell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here, Mrs. Huxtable. You say this is all self-reporting. How do we know how accurate that is? And I know on a lot of taxation issues, self-reporting is commonly undervalued. So what percentage do you think we're getting, and how do you think that we could improve on that? Is there could we make the system easier? How could we increase on participation in that? Thank you.
Assessor Huxtable, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, thank you for the question. So let me clarify, when I said it's self-reporting, the personal property is self-reported. When it comes to real property in regards to taxation and including the exemptions, that is the responsibility of the local assessor. Many times we don't know what those exemption items might be without the taxpayer applying for them. So when it comes to pollution and fire, they have to apply. That's the purpose for that, is they have to apply for it timely. And then we do audit. For the most part, we go out and audit those properties to determine what's there, meet with them, talk about the specific types of property. And so when it's real property, it's a little different scenario than it's personal property because we are going from their reported cost and then using the rules within the Department of Revenue for trending depreciation and then applying an obsolescence if it's appropriate or the appropriate exemption for pollution or fire suppression. And remember, it is fire suppression, and both of those are in the statute. So be happy to work with you in detail if you want more information about any of those. I tend to have most all of that in my county. We have a lot of industrial, commercial stuff that does have those kinds of exemptions. So rather than belabor it here in front of everyone, I'm happy to visit with you on a separate note and provide it to you that you could share with your committee.
Thank you, Assessor. And like I said, I definitely think it might be some additional knowledge we can prepare for a third meeting. And I do think that extra input would be helpful.
Sure.
Perfect. Other questions for Assessor Huxtable? Representative Storer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Assessor Huxtable, for being here. So we're looking at the exemptions we put on, total $196 million in exempted tax dollars across the counties. We also used to have, not only did we have the state refund program, but we had the county refund program. And my understanding is the loss of tax dollars at the county level has impacted how many counties have taken advantage of that. And I wondered if you could give us an update on that.
Assessor Huxtable,
Mr.
please.
Chairman, Representative Storer, I can give you some in response to my county. So Converse County is one of those counties that did the optional property tax relief program, which is I think what you were referring to. So just as a quick rundown, and for those that may not remember all the things that you, the legislators, have done for your taxpayers, and it's significant. That's what's happened. We've had a VETS program for years. Veterans get an exemption based on their service to our country. The property tax refund program has been in place for a long time. It's not always been funded, but it has been funded in recent years. And you allowed the county's participation in a county optional, which my county participates in. As a result of that, I have several taxpayers in my county that was able to get their property taxes fully refunded between those two programs. Some of them were significant, some actually got fully. Then you added in the 4% cap on the residential structure. We processed that to, in my mind, kind of level the property tax level that the taxpayer could expect to pay. Then we did the 4% land, same philosophy. Then we added you added the homeowners. I say we because we get to administer, but it's certainly at your direction is what we're doing. The 25% exemption across the board to every residential property with the goal somewhere down the road to be owner occupied as I understood it. And then we have the long-term homeowners, which added another 25, or basically removed the first 25 and gave them 50% if they met those qualifications. There's a lot of exemptions out there, and each county felt them differently. Every taxing entity felt them differently. If you had a property of more established residents, I don't want to use the older term, but people that have been there a long time, they probably felt it a lot more than a new community where there's new people moving in. So I don't have the numbers for you. We'd be happy to get those for you and work up as county assessors what the impacts are for each one of them. We do have that. Every county assessor knows how much tax dollars was exempted for each one of these programs. I can certainly aggregate that for you and get that for this committee moving forward, but it was substantial. And a lot of the counties had taxing entities that felt it even more so because of the rural nature of those entities, fire departments, weed and pest, those kinds of things that felt these impacts significantly more. So I don't know if that answers your question, Representative Storer, but I would happy to continue if you need me.
Representative Storer, please. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that review, Assessor Huxtable. My understanding is there were 5 counties, I think in 2024, that took advantage of the county optional refund program that was means tested and specific to folks with lower incomes. And I know Teton County was one of those counties and provided significant refunds to people who most needed it. I know Teton County chose not to do the refund program this year because they also saw a reduction in their property tax coming into the county, and even actually raised their mill levy 1 mil in order to offset some of those revenue losses. But that kind of means, you know, when it's a more expensive home is going to get a bigger tax break. And so I think what we're seeing is that, especially with the 4% cap in Teton County, that number's $400 million of assessed value just because of the cap. And as a result, people who really need the refund program are not able to access that program. So that's a policy decision, but I think it's something that everyone should understand why that's happening. And I believe there were 5 counties before, and maybe there's only 1 county that's actually, there's 2, says Mr. Jeremiah is helping us out. So 3 counties stopped doing that.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Storer, that's my understanding as well. I hadn't seen the actual formal results of budgeting and all that process for all the counties, but I was led to believe that there was probably only 2 counties that were going to be able to continue that. So you're correct. There are going to be some people that probably had gotten property tax relief program in the past that won't get it in the future. Thank you.
Any follow-up? Okay, very good. Any other questions? Assessor Huxtable, thank you, and thank you for your thoughts on that. I really do appreciate it because I do think that some of that additional data will help us. Thank you. All right, anybody else in the room to speak? Okay. I don't blame anybody for not being attacked by or attacking the numbers too hard. It gets a little bit tricky. Online.
Yes, sir. We have Scott Clem online.
Okay. Sounds great. Let's bring Mr. Clem in.
He's online now, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me?
He's online now, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, he is. We just don't see him. Is that correct? Am I looking in the right place? Who knows?
All right, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, Mr. Clem, we can hear you. Thank you and welcome. And please proceed, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure about the camera there, but I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. I just wanted to comment on 2 things. First is the refund program, and you know, I'm certainly as a county commissioner, I'm certainly in support of that. I was as a previous legislator as well. That refund program has been around for a long time, and its whole purpose is really, it's kind of, you might say, one of those original safety nets to provide relief to those taxpayers who really are of lower means. And so it's an incredible program, and can't speak highly enough about it. So whatever happens in the future, I hope that you guys hang on to that. With respect to the environmental controls and fire suppression, I just thought this would be of value, just something to think about as I was listening to the discussion. We are all aware that industrial processes have an environmental impact. And if those environmental impacts aren't mitigated, then the costs ultimately are passed on to the state and the taxpayers, whether that's increased usage of fire department or dirty air, dirty water, or something that negatively impacts the health of our people here. Controlled voluntarily or through mandatory laws and regulations, you know, these have costs in order to mitigate these environmental impacts, and these costs are borne by the company. I just wanted to throw out there that I believe it's in the state's and the people's interest to have these environmental, controls and fire suppression controls on behalf of the state and on behalf of the people. And the state traditionally has done that through incentivizing these through tax exemptions. So if at any such point, you know, if the state is looking for some more cash somewhere and wants to try to, make these non-exempt, Eliminating such exemptions ultimately mean higher costs for businesses. And if businesses aren't required to do this, whether through law or through regulation, then those environmental impacts, whether through in fire suppression controls, all that kind of stuff, it ultimately gets passed on to the state and to the taxpayers. They may choose not to add such equipment, which would be their choice, right? So they're saving themselves money. But again, those costs are then shifted on to, the costs don't go away. The environmental impacts don't go away. They're just shifted to somewhere else. And that happens to be the state and the people. So I think it's good actually that we have those exemptions. I'm happy that the state does that because ultimately I believe that's a way to incentivize a good and clean environment such that we have here in Wyoming. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Clem, and thank you for coming online. Any questions for Mr. Clem? Looks like we don't have any, Mr. Clem. Thank you so much again for dialing in. We appreciate that. And did I miss anybody in the room? We're okay. At this point, again, this was largely informational. Let's go ahead and move on to the second topic. Or wait a minute, do we have anybody else online? Yeah, I might be jumping the gun.
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, not at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Appreciate that. I have a propensity to jump the gun here on this one, so I was going to try to get moving. So we'll move into the next topic, which is, and actually we're sort of almost on time. That's not too bad, but see how we do here. The next topic is review of additional property tax open issues. And really our goal with this particular topic was the fact that, as everybody in this room knows and can guess, that often when we do this legislation, we always have unintended consequences. I've heard of several myself. Maybe if it's, I've talked to our county assessor to get some additional feedback. This one, I think we'll start with the department. Ken, if you want to start with it or whoever is appropriate. I could give a couple of examples myself, but probably almost as much as anything, I'm sure Assessor Huxtable can probably give us some insights as well. And just to kind of start it off, I know there's been some unexpected cases concerning the application of the long-term homeowner. And Mr. Gill, if that's probably one place to start. And then I know I had some other questions in there, but we would, more than anything, I think this committee needs to understand what are some of the, with the implementation of some of these tax exemptions all on top of each other and the impacts between them. I think we want to understand what are some of the things that we didn't see when we passed the legislation that we probably need to look at for cleanup purposes. So that's the biggest driver of this section. I'll probably would ask not only the department here, but I know county assessors, please feel free to come up. I think we want to get this conversation going and allow the committee to ask questions about some of the issues that you've seen. But please, Mr. Gill, press ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ken Gill, Property Tax Division. Yeah, we passed a lot of exemptions in the past 2 years. And some of the exemptions were on top of an exemption on top of another exemption. CAMA system wise, I'm going to speak from a 30,000 foot level because I wasn't on the ground. I can sit in my third floor office and say, yeah, that theory should work. But these folks here have to implement it. Yeah, we had some problems with some calculations in the CAMA system, no doubt about it. We worked through them. I was really proud of myself and the staff. We rolled out those exemptions very quickly. If you remember, the 2024 cap on the residential structures, it was retro back to January 1 in 2024. And we were able to roll that out after the session ended and the governor signed that bill. We were able to roll that out within a week and a half to 2 weeks and actually have the tools in the locals' hands. Then we moved to 2025. We had the cap on the land. Well, we already knew we could do the structure. So We could do the land too. We implemented that one pretty quickly. We knew we had the long-term homeowners and we were able to do that. The percentage ones like that are a little bit easier to apply in a majority of the cases, not all of the cases, but in a majority. And then, of course, we had the 25%. And again, that was retroactive to January 1, 2025, and we were able to roll that out. I would say that we've pushed our CAMA system to the limit, the current CAMA system that we're under. And as you know, it has been reported over the past couple of years, and money was appropriated to move to a new CAMA system and base it in the cloud. So we are in the process of that right now. The new CAMA system, the new version, should allow us a little more versatility that we didn't have before. We're also changing database languages. So there's a little learning curve for everyone, but we're planning on training on that. Currently, we have 5 counties in the new CAMA system that is actually being hosted in the Azure cloud. And we've gone from there. Now, I think if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, to address one of your questions that you asked me, that you emailed me or reached out. And it was on a long-term homeowner that they qualified for the long-term homeowners exemption, the 50% exemption. They were 65 or older, and they had paid property taxes in Wyoming, residential property taxes in Wyoming for 25 years. So they applied in the late fall, more than likely, and the assessor said, yes, you qualify. Okay, we're going to give you the exemption. They ended up selling their house in late May, almost early June. And when they closed on that house, they didn't receive the benefit of that exemption. Yeah, that I can see that problem. So after speaking with you, Mr. Chairman, I reached out to a handful of title companies out there to just see how they were handling this. And not every transaction in the state of Wyoming goes through a title company. We know that, but a lot do. And I asked the question, how are you handling these exemptions? Well, the 8 or 9 that I talked to, I got quite a few different answers, obviously. You know, a couple of them said, yeah, we didn't even know there was a problem. It was never brought to our attention. And maybe the customers they dealt with didn't get the long-term homeowners. Who knows? I had a few say, yes, we did deal with that. The customer said, hey, we get this exemption on this house, so our prorated piece of the taxes during this transaction need to be adjusted. And so that title company actually reached out to the county, and they worked out the numbers the best they could. Keep in mind, the mill levies hadn't been set yet, right? So there's some moving issues there because our tax calendar moves at a certain pace. So the mill levies hadn't been set. So they estimated the amount of exemption that they were due and then prorated it appropriately between the grantor and the grantee. So I think looking at the title 39, I think it's 3917, is it? Assessor? Anyway, I will get that statute. It's off the top of my head. I forgot. But that title there says when there's a grantor and grantee during that year, if there's no contractual agreement between that grantor and grantee on the taxes, then the grantor is responsible for the taxes that year. In other words, they own the property on January 1. So I hope that helps. Path forward, Chairman, you asked me, how do we solve this? Chairman, I really don't know, because every situation is going to be so different. You know, if they sold it after mill levies are set in September or tax bills are set, I think that would probably be easy. But before that, then the title company is really estimating, you know, what they have to do. And obviously, I know the realtors are here today, and they can probably speak a lot better to that subject than I can.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. And I think another aspect of that, and at least of that specific case, if I can ask a question, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead of the committee. If the committee has questions, I apologize. But another aspect of that was in them buying their new house, there was some question as to whether that how it applied to that new house. Can you speak to that at all? How it currently would, because that's one of those cases where I believe, and I'm going to use these terms loosely, so bear with me. I think in our minds, this was, this exemption sticks to the person, sort of. And I'm questioning, and the reason I brought it up is I'm questioning, is that an issue with the way we wrote the statute, which it very well could be. So your thoughts on that would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman, great point. You know, the veterans exemption follows the veteran, right? It does. But I know from my past experience, there's been veterans that have missed out on their benefit because they did sell their property, and maybe the buyer actually benefited from their veterans exemption. It probably happened, just depending on when it was sold and when it was applied. Unless the veteran told the title company or negotiated with the buyer that, hey, I get this benefit, so my proration is going to be a little bit less than it would have been. So it's, I think the residency requirement, that residency piece of staying in the house X amount of years, I think that might be in question, or not many months, excuse me, that many months, that maybe that was a question in that particular case. But I think, and Assessor Huxtable can speak better to this, but from what I heard, there were more problems than just, oh, I sold my house. We had folks apply, they qualified, and they passed away. And that might have even been before the first of the year. And maybe the estate sold the house. There were a multitude of issues that happened with that, which we expect. And it does happen with exemptions. But keep in mind, we're always a January 1 assessment year. And how to fix it following that person, I really don't have a really good thought on that yet, sir.
Thank you. And yeah, I think maybe even that 8-month, maybe the way we word that, that they're them living in, we probably worded it, I can't remember the exact wording in the statute, but we probably worded it living in the home. And maybe the question is living in the state might be more relevant if we're trying to stick this. This is just me thinking out loud. Your thoughts on that are great. I'd love to hear it.
Mr. Chairman, I understand your thoughts, but it's really going to depend upon that time of year. And knowing that the owner of record is always as of January 1, that throws a real loop into it. We don't recognize that new owner until the next January 1.
Thank you. That's helpful. And Co-Chairman, please.
In your estimate, how many cases of these issues did we have? Was it widespread or more onesies and twosies? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman, I don't know that number, but I would say it's going to be a minority. You know, like I said, we had over 32,000 applications statewide, and I only know of the one case that the chairman brought to me, but and a few other cases that I heard about, but I'm going to say it's a very, very low percentage. I'm assuming.
Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just a real quick question. I had a constituent ask me about the 65-year age limit, and I'm assuming, I couldn't give them a straight answer, but they were looking for potentially a proration if they turned 65 halfway through the tax year. But just to confirm, January 1 is the drop dead date for reaching the age of 65 years old. Just want to clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, actually in our rules, we made it at the time of application that they had to be 65. That's the way we interpreted the law that you passed. So on the fourth Monday in May, that's when the application is due under current law. If they turned 65 on the fourth Monday in May and applied, it was granted. So that's how we wrote the rules. And that's how we interpreted the intent of the legislation that this body did pass.
Senator Ide, please.
So, yeah, that effectively answers my question, but so could they apply in that window in May if they, but they don't turn 65 until later on that year? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, great question. No, they would not qualify, but they would qualify the next year. So if it was June 1 that they turned 65, they would not qualify for that tax year. And really no good way, Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, no really good way to administer that. You know, if someone turns 65 in August after that deadline. So, but the next year they will get it. And of course, as you know, currently in law, that program is only for the 2025 tax year and the 2026 tax year.
Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking this on for us today. My first question is, are you aware of anybody that voluntarily paid their 100% tax bill with none of the exemptions applied to it?
Ms. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, yes, I am. I am aware of cases from a certain county when we were looking at data where they actually told the assessor to take away the exemption. In fact, the assessor I was working with, they had about 8 or 9 people that at that time, and this has been quite a few months ago, at that time that had rejected the 25%. They must not have qualified for the 50 though, I'm assuming, but they rejected the 25% because if you remember in Senate File 69, that was a caveat that was written in there that they could exempt themselves from the exemption. Now, terrible way to put that. But I think you will see that also in folks that live in other states and also have a residence here. So Senate File 69 exempted all single-family residences across the state with the 25%. It didn't have to be owner-occupied or anything like that, right? Well, the state of Florida, which a lot of our folks have houses down in Florida and come back here in the summer and go back there in the winter, if they get the homestead exemption in that state, they can receive no real estate or real property exemptions in another state, or else they disqualify themselves. And in talking to a person I actually know that got rid of the exemption, they felt that the homestead exemption in Florida was a much better deal because their property was so much more valuable down in Florida than it was here. So yeah, great question. And I think the assessors can probably speak better to that.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee on that topic? Okay. Am I missing anybody? Thank you, Mr. Gale. I appreciate that. And we'll probably have a few more topics, but yes, I'd love to hear Assessor, what your thoughts are on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Dixie Huxtable, Converse County Assessor. I was just going to give a little bit of an update on the process that we use, just so everybody knows. When this was coming about, we worked hard last fall to put a notice in everybody's tax bill in the state of Wyoming. Worked with the treasurers. Treasurers were very helpful with that, so that we could put out there to all the taxpayers that were getting a bill in 2024 what to expect as we knew it then coming up in the next year. So we started working on this process last fall, which maybe was not a good idea because we did get a lot of these questions, but we wanted people to be notified and we wanted them to be informed. So most assessors, if not all assessors, had town hall meetings. We sent out notices. We went on the radio. We did public meetings to try and tell everybody what was coming. As a result of that, until you passed the final legislation, we didn't know the exact answers, especially with the rules. The department was getting the rules out there, and so we were having to be a little bit generic in some of our comments until we knew how the rules were going to play out. So there were some people that came to us that were interested in selling their property or had not turned 65. And most of the assessors gave them the advice, wait until closer to May when you make a decision what you're going to do, so we can get your application filed timely and get you qualified. Therefore, some of the people that sold their property early in the year, they were the owner on January 1st, but the application that they were filling out, they were not residing in it anymore. So that requirement in the law, as you had just commented earlier, residential real property and primary residence means residential real property where the person claiming the exemption actually resides for 8 months out of the year. That's the language in the law that we were trying to adhere to. So one, you had to own the property on January 1st, and you had to reside in that property for 8 months. So if you sold the property, that created some problems. And we did our best to work through them. If you owned it on January 1st and on the fourth Monday in May, you still own the property, you got the exemption if you qualified. As far as the contractual agreement between you, the buyer, and the seller, that is not something we are a party to and probably should not be a party to. That's between them and their title or closing agent to sort that out. As Administrator Gill stated, the statute's very clear that if you don't come up with an agreement, it's the grantor, it's the seller that's responsible for those taxes. So we hung on to that as our lien date being January 1st and following through on the process. Now, could it be tweaked? Could it be changed? Absolutely, that can be worked on, but I don't have an answer for you that's going to fit every possible scenario that's going to pop up. You had cases where husband and wives owned two properties, and the husband lived in one and the wife lived in the other. And those are all things we had to work through. And each case was different, as Administrator Gill spoke about. The 8-month residency caused us some concern. How do I know that for tax year 25, you're going to live in it for 8 months? Most of us were using that philosophy that you're stating that you lived in it for 8 months. So you filled this out in October or November and said you live in this house. That's the answer we went with. If you later moved, we wouldn't know that. And that would be a taxpayer coming to us. You might have sold the property on a contract, but if it wasn't filed, we didn't know that. So there's a lot of things in the moving parts that to try to do an amendment to this is going to take some serious thought and working through. I would reiterate that it's for 1 year. So that 1 year when you sell the property or that you moved in, you're not going to get the exemption, but you would the next year, presuming you stay. It's not for eternity, it's just for that 1 year. And then depending on what legislation happens in this next year, of course, that could change as well. The other thing that I wanted to let you know is we have worked with the treasurers again. And this year in the 2025 tax bill, it's going to be coming out after September 1st. Every taxpayer is going to get a notice again of what we anticipate they need to do to qualify for the owner-occupied 25% homeowners and the long-term homeowners, as we know it now, as the law is written now, not based on any draft legislation that's out there. But in an effort to make sure everybody's informed, what they need to do, contact your local assessor. We worked with the Department of Revenue, come up with an affidavit that if you qualified last year, we can streamline the process so that they can get it filled out when I believe Administrator Gill took it to the AG so we could get it all legal and okay. So we're working on that process to try to make it as seamless for the taxpayer as we can, but there's just a lot of situations that pop up that nobody anticipated. And we do the best that we can to assist the taxpayer, but within the letter of the law is what we're required by oath to follow. And so could the law be written differently? Absolutely. How the consequences will play out, I can't give you that answer until we know exactly how you might want to change that. And I would answer any other questions that you might have.
Questions for Assessor Huxtable?
Well, then I'll ask a few because I think our goal here is to try to better understand where these things are breaking down. Perfect example is there's probably some confusion on when that 8-month period should have been considered. So there might be value in making that clear in the statute so it's clear, or work with the department to make sure there's rules. I'm just using that as an example, and I want to literally throw that out to you. And the other question that I know has come up a few times from our assessor locally, they brought up some great questions. For example, and these are things more than anything, I guess I'd like your opinion on, and I'm throwing them out for your thought, are things like the timing of the application for some of these. How do we fix things like that to make it easier on the assessor? So more than anything, this particular agenda item, we're really truly looking for where is there confusion and how do we get rid of that confusion so your implementation is much simpler. We're trying to make it easier on you and the taxpayers. Another question I would like to bring up is, it's my understanding that a lot of the taxpayers had a lot of difficulty finding their data, long-term homeowners, finding the information they had, and that in some cases put burden on the county assessor office as well. Just your thoughts on some of these different things. I would love to hear what you have to say about those.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some things to streamline, and let me step back real quick. We value property, and the property tax stays with the property. So to change the exemption that you're applying to the property tax to a person and be able to track that is very difficult in our mind administratively. Could it be done? Probably. We just don't have a solution to help with that. The deadline situation, if anybody remembers, we did ask that this deadline be moved up to like March when the bill was being drafted, and that didn't happen. They went with the same deadline as the veterans, the fourth Monday in May. That is a timing issue. I had 708 applicants. Mine was relatively moderate for my staff to deal with. Laramie County had over 5,000 that they had to deal with. And you're dealing with veterans and long-term homeowners, and then just the general questions if you've already sent out your notices of the appeal period. So that's where some of the confusion came in for the taxpayers. They really didn't know what questions they were asking and what they should ask to get the right answer. So we're trying to provide documentation to them to help with that. Moving the deadline up, in our opinion, would be helpful, maybe to March 1st or sometime earlier, to give everybody the time to get it in, the assessors to get them processed. If there's questions, if they need to find those addresses for those 25 years. I think it's remarkable that we were just talking about this morning. The 90-year-old taxpayers that came in knew where they've lived for their entire life and could give us every address. It's the people that came in here and moved here probably 25 or 30 years ago that needed 2 pages of documentation to find out where they've lived over time. So that tells you how fast people are moving in Wyoming. They're moving around. The old timers, and my dad just turned 94 today, so he's an old timer. So he could give you every address he's been at. But when we ask for those addresses, that was a purpose, because you wanted us to verify that they had paid property taxes for 25 years. The only way for us to do that is to know what their address was. Some of it was difficult because people just didn't know. And yes, some of the assessors had to take on, or voluntarily, or did take on that role of helping them locate that, to the point where some of the assessors paid online fees to go to another county to find documents to help them find out where they've lived. They knew they were in Converse County, but they didn't know where. So there was a lot of effort put out there by the assessors to try to help these taxpayers get that done. Could it be streamlined? Yes. I think the biggest hurdle has been met because you've had the most of them already in. So if we can go with the affidavit that says nothing's changed, I still live where I live and everything's the same, that will be a streamlined thing for the taxpayer. And that's what we're hoping to do for the 26 tax year, depending on how the legislation comes out. I do think the timeline of getting some of these exemptions on the same timeline would be helpful for the taxpayer. But I will also tell you that it's human nature to wait till the last minute. So sometimes it doesn't really matter what the deadline is. They're not going to come in till the week before. And that's why we tried to have town hall meetings. We tried to reach out to the senior citizens. We went to everywhere we could think of to get them motivated, took the applications with us, tried to help them. But there's just a certain percentage of the human beings that are going to wait to the deadline, whatever that deadline is. And the fourth Monday in May is awfully close to our abstract date of June 1st to get everything in and accurate so your taxing entities have a good value when they're trying to set mill levies. So, maybe moving it forward. The veterans is different because if you know, remember, it's reimbursed. So that's not as big a deal for the veterans to be the fourth Monday in May because that's a reimbursable, that doesn't affect our abstract, but these others do. And so moving that timeline up, the homeowners, we've worked with the Department of Revenue to get the portal set up through the Department of Revenue so people can go online. Tried to make it as simple as we could, tested it amongst the assessors to honestly try to break it. God bless the Department of Revenue, let us break it a couple times so we could try to find out what they needed to know. They need their county, their name, their address, and they can go online and fill out the proper paperwork for the owner occupied portion of the 25% homeowners that's supposed to go into play. So we've worked really hard to try to make it as easy as we can. That timeline, that is not in statutes, the timeline for that. That is going to be through rules, as I understand it. And I believe it's going to be opened October 1st and be closed February 1st to give us that time to get that owner occupied stuff verified. Because as you can imagine, it's going to be a significant workload. The goal by doing it through the department was to be able to download it automatically through our computer systems, but somebody's still going to have to verify all those. So ownership, if it changed hands, those kinds of things. So that's the process for the homeowners owner occupied portion that's coming up as it's written currently in law. That timeline is October 1st to February 1st. Currently, that's what we're dealing with. The long-term homeowners is still the fourth Monday in May. But we're hoping to have that affidavit available as soon as the tax bills go out. That's one of the things we put in their tax bills that's coming out. Contact your local assessor. We'll have an affidavit that we can partially fill out with computer help and get them to sign it and be good to go. So we're doing what we can, but certainly we're open to suggestions, or we can certainly look at any alternatives if that's the pleasure of this committee.
Co-chairman, please.
We're coming up on almost a year's worth of data on this, are we not?
Ms. Huxtable?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, it's been in place so that the long-term homeowners, this is the first year obviously that's been applied. We're just now seeing the results of, you just saw the numbers from the Department of Revenue. So yes, it's a year that we've been working on the process, but we don't know the ramifications, if that's what you mean. We're trying to trimline the process as we go. The homeowners was pretty simple. Every residential structure got the 25% last year. That was relatively simple to do. So we don't have all the data yet on the owner occupied, but we're working on that.
Once we had that data, would it be possible to ascertain the actual cost of the special situations and what happened?
Ms. Huxtable?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I'm not sure I understand. Are you talking about the cost to the assessor's office to do this, or the taxpayers that didn't get the exemption?
Cost to the state.
Okay.
Ms. Huxtable?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sure we can. I don't know how much detail each assessor's office was able to keep as far as the documentation of the cost, extra labor, extra fees that were involved, but we can certainly work on that. I will tell you that moving forward, several of the assessor budgets have been cut because of reduction of values. So whether they're going to be able to keep that up in this next year, I just don't know, but we can certainly look into that and get you the information that we have.
I just want to make, Mr. Chairman, sorry.
No, you're good.
I want to make sure it's a big issue. And we're not, as we used to say in the Army, pole vaulting mouse turds. If there's 3 people in your county that had a problem, we could almost go back and fix those 3 people's situations. Now, if it's a large number, I could see why streamlining and everything would be better. But at what cost when we could just do kind of a forensic audit on it each year and catch the few that were caught up in it.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, uh, um, we asked that question this morning of the assessors. We have about 10 assessors in the room that are willing to answer those questions that you have. Nobody had more than a handful that were significant issues that they had to deny. But there was a lot of time spent because they wanted to treat everybody fairly. If I'm going to question one, I need to question everybody. Or if I'm not going to question anybody, I can't, everybody, I can't question anybody. So there were some policy decisions within each office, and that depended on the resources that that office had. But we can certainly get together what we've spent, including what the treasurers put out for the extra notices, because that was all a fee that the counties absorbed, and this fall. And that's all to try to get the information out to the taxpayer. But I would hazard a guess there was probably less than a dozen in every county, and probably even less than that. My county, there was less than 3.
Yeah, Co-Chairman, please.
Well, I would ask you, those fees, getting this ramped up and ready to run, i.e. the town halls, the notifications, that's kind of a one-time expense to do business, isn't it?
Ms. Huxtable.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, it really was. We felt like it was. And to be honest, in my county, we took all the elected officials and took all the bills that were coming in and kind of did a town hall with everything. Somehow property tax got the most time during that meeting. I don't know why, but maybe they just like to listen to me talk. I don't know. But if we're going to continue those, certainly that there could be some cost associated with those, especially when we change an exemption or do an amendment and it changes what we've already told them or how we're processing it. So it probably, most people would look at that as a one-time cost, but moving forward, it may be more depending on what happens in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Huxtable.
Representative Lean, do you have your hand up? Okay, thank you. Representative Lean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming today, Ms. Huxtable. Just a couple of questions. Let's start with the first one. Would you be willing to provide how many in the statewide that it did not take any exemptions for the committee? Could you find that information and get it to us? Or should I
Mr.
do it
Chairman,
directly?
Representative Lean, yes, I think we could do that. Find out how many, probably the department can help us out with that faster, but we can certainly take that on as an assessors association as well.
Great, thank you.
Follow up?
Yes,
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr.
Lean.
Chairman.
Representative Lean.
I hear you speak about budgets being cut to county assessors, and I'm wondering if you could tell me which counties those are so that I might research what their budgets look like.
Ms. Huxtable.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lean, I do not know those, but I can get them to you. I'm just hearing conversation from assessors of people that were asked to take a 10% cut or a 15% in their budget. So now that the mill levies are done and the budgets are final, we could probably get that for you. I don't have it with me, but I can certainly provide that.
Other questions from the committee? Representative Riggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Huxtable. When you're talking about a March date for moving up the application process, specific date, middle of the month, first of the month, et cetera, et cetera. If you guys could let us know a little bit what you think on that if we move forward. Talking about confirming owner occupation, and I was sitting here thinking about, well, if they have their mail forwarded from their house in September and they quit doing it in March, then we know. But I don't know how you would confirm or confirm that such an action. So certainly in Wyoming, there's plenty of people that exit here in October and don't come back till March or April. So, and I know some of those people do that, and I think they just know we won't be here half that time, so they will only apply for that particular exemption. So, has any of the people you've been visiting had any ideas about how you would approach that confirmation process?
Ms. Huxtable.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Riggins, Yes, we have, which is why we put the notice, one of the reasons we put this insert into the tax bill. So every property owner that gets a tax bill, that will get a tax bill in September, will have this notice that tells them how they can go online, because this is going to be open online as far as the owner occupied side. And it's not just the people that are moving in and out. We're looking for those rentals, because we're looking for owner occupied. So you may own it, but you don't occupy it, you rental. So it's not just the moving, the residency requirement, it's certainly the non-owner occupied that we're looking for. And that's one reason we worked with the department in advance to get that portal set up so that they could log in. It's managed through the Department of Revenue. It's tied to our CAMA system. It's a relatively easy process if you have computer access. But we also have noted that most county assessors are going to have a portal set up. I will have in Commerce County on my counter for those people like my parents. My dad couldn't turn a computer on if he had to, and he can come in and we can help them get through that process. So most assessors have done that. As far as the deadline, one of the reasons I chose March 1st is that's the deadline for personal property renditions. That's already a date business people are familiar with. March 1st is when they are due. So that was a date we picked. If you wanted to bump it up to February or whatever, we're open for that. Just getting it further away from that fourth Monday in May that's so close to abstract would allow some more time, but then you may want to address that 8-month residing in the home either through our rules process or through your language, because there's no way that you're going to sign an affidavit in February that you're going to live 8 months in that house of that tax year. So it would have to be considered the previous year or some consideration made.
Thanks, Ms. Huxtable, and Representative or Senator Ide, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Huxtable, just a quick question. Do you guys have an ongoing program to look at or audit inefficiencies in your department at the assessor's office? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Huxtable.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, I don't have an official process to monitor inefficiencies, but my taxpayers usually let me know pretty quickly if I'm not being efficient. I guess that's the best way to say that I'm audited, is if something's not working, usually my taxpayers bring it to my attention. But we don't have, I don't have a specific process, but I will tell you that we are audited by the Department of Revenue. As a matter of fact, my audit is coming up in regards to my processes and procedures in my office in September. We are also audited and reviewed by the State Board of Equalization, who ask questions. The obsolescence spoke about earlier is one of those questions that the State Board of Equalization asks us. So there are oversight agencies that watch that our procedures are efficient, and if we fall behind, go as far as giving us work plan or a work order to get more efficient with what at least they deem we need to get done in a timely fashion. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Ms. Huxtable. Representative Lee, and let's try to keep it quick. I think we want to get to see if there's any other comment. I think so. Please,
Thank you,
Representative.
Mr. Chairman. Ms. Huxtable, on the website that you speak of, or the portal that you're calling it, does it also allow for the long-term homeowners to apply online?
Ms. Huxtable.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lind, it does not. The application process for the long-term homeowners, the application is available, but it still has to be submitted in person to the assessor, because we need to verify the 25 years of property tax residence. Now, as far as the affidavit, that's still going to be something that they're going to need to fill into us. It's not the option for them. At this point, it's not an option for them to fill that out and submit it, because the long-term homeowners is not estate driven. It needs to come to the local assessors. And the homeowners, we're trying to tie that to the CAMA system to make it efficient, so that we're doing this as efficient as possible. They put in the account number, the county, and it would be able to be downloaded into an import process where we could not have to key every one of those in. And so that's why the homeowners is through the state, and the long-term homeowners is an application driven by the state. It's provided by the state, but it comes to the local assessor.
Yes, Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that explanation. My next question is about the timeline. I hear you say from October to February 1, and I'm curious, if we're going to look at legislation to make some uniform deadlines, would you be willing to extend that to March 1 or have a conversation with your assessors to extend that to March 1?
Ms. Huxtable.
Mr. Chairman, representing, absolutely, certainly. And it's actually the department that will make that final decision because it's going to be in their, it'll be through their rules. So we've kind of all have agreed to that timeline, but I'm certain that it could be extended. I don't know about shortening it a lot at this point, but extending it to March 1st certainly would be doable, I would anticipate.
Thank you, Ms. Huxtable. Any other questions? If not, is there anyone at this point who would like to speak on this topic? Please fill the chairs and we'd love to hear about it. And one thing I would like to with Ms. Huxtable leaving, I do think that ongoing conversation just on areas where there's complexities, same thing for the department, areas there's complexities, what can we do to tidy up, let's just say, is what we're really looking at. And we want to be conscious of the fact that we weren't sure about the impacts of some of these issues. It sounds like they're not significant. They're very small impacts, but we still want to be sensitive to the fact we want to make the process as simple as possible. And thank you. Please start at whatever end you'd like to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Nate Martin. I'm the executive director of Better Wyoming. We're a nonprofit that trains people how to participate in civic processes like this that shape their lives in our communities. Since 2019, the median home price in Wyoming is going up something like 90%. You know, we bought a house. My wife and I were lucky enough to buy one in 2018. A couple months ago, some friends of ours bought one down the street from us, same size house, same age. They paid double what we paid. It's crazy. As the home prices have increased, of course, property taxes are pegged to that. So some people's property taxes have gone up. Some have gone up a lot. Others not so much. And the legislature, as many of you know, responded by passing a series of targeted specific measures to provide property tax relief. And then something shifted. It seems that politicians figured out that they could use property tax cuts as a campaign issue and sell it to voters as free money with no consequences. Hey, vote for me. I'll get you a property tax cut. Free money, no consequences. And what started as a kitchen table issue became a campaign issue. And it worked. People won their elections. And as you all know, the legislature proceeded to pass a 25% across-the-board property tax cut last legislative session. And now you've got a whole raft of other property tax cuts lined up to consider tomorrow afternoon, up to and including just abolishing property taxes that unfortunately have real consequences. Now, there are people who have tried to sound the alarm about this and describe the consequences. Hospital board members who rely on property taxes to make sure their communities are healthy. County commissioners who rely on property taxes to make sure that they can keep the roads paved and plowed. School board members who use property taxes to make sure that they can educate the children in their communities. Sheriffs, fire chiefs who rely on property taxes to keep their community safe. Now, these are all respected members of their own individual communities, and many people think that they have pretty important jobs. But to be fair, they also spend the money, right? They're the ones who spend the money. Well, the people who I have with me today, these folks and about, I don't know, say this whole half of the room, are not people who have day jobs that spend property tax revenue. They're homeowners, they're taxpayers, they're voters, and there are people who recognize that the conversation about property tax cuts at the legislature has become dishonest and reckless. And there are people who recognize that the consequences of cutting property tax, the services that benefit all of our communities that depend on property taxes have consequences, and those services are not free. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you guys are okay, we'll just let you all speak, and then if people have questions, we'll ask you all together. Will that be acceptable?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Lisa Jameson. I'm a Casper native. I attended K through 12 schools here, and I received an associate's degree from Casper College. I've been a homeowner paying property taxes since 1992. No one loves paying taxes, but I'm proud that I've been doing my small part by contributing to my community for a few decades now. I'm not a public speaker, and up to now, my interest in the boring work of the state government has been limited. Casper's a nice place to live. We have good schools with good teachers. We have nice parks. We have affordable sports and recreational activities. We have responsive police and fire services. When I started my own family, my husband and I considered moving away, but I wanted to stay in Casper, partly to be near family, and partly because it's a nice place to be a family. I have a child in middle school right now. I came here today to ask, what is going on? My property taxes have been cut by 25%, but there seems to be no plan to maintain funding for schools and municipalities. Who cuts a revenue source without having already implemented a replacement source? This is irresponsible. This is bonkers. I hear rumors of grocery taxes, maybe cutting property taxes by 50%, or maybe eliminating them altogether. I hear of backfilling education shortfalls by draining the rainy day fund. Draining the rainy day fund for a fabricated emergency of the legislature's own making. This is bonkers. And who would raise grocery taxes on people who are living paycheck to paycheck as a direct result of giving wealthy property owners, some of whom own multiple properties, huge tax breaks? What is going on? Why does the state not have a long-term revenue plan? I'm disappointed that I feel the need to be here today. I saw the city of Casper painstakingly develop a detailed, responsible budget, only to have the rug pulled out under them when the state suddenly cut revenue with seemingly no plan. Just, we don't like paying taxes, let's just do away with them. I expect state representatives to be serious and honest about what it costs to run the government, about the outlook for revenue sources, and about future goals. I expect leaders to do their job in such a way that I am not worried about what bomb is about to drop next. I urge you, please be responsible, be boring. Don't defund and destroy our institutions. I think what's important to people like me is I would like for our communities to remain nice places to live, and I'm willing to pay taxes to keep that going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jameson. Hopefully I had that right.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about property.
Please introduce name. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure.
In Wyoming. My name is Lori Longtime. I am a fourth generation Wyomingite, and I currently live on the property that my grandparents moved to with my mother as a baby in 1936. Having lived in Wyoming most of my life, I've had the benefit of enjoying many community services that are paid for by property taxes. The greatest benefit I believe I have received is the undoubtedly excellent public education that I have enjoyed, both as an NCHS graduate, Casper College graduate, and a UW Extension graduate. All of those paid for by property taxes. But education is not the only way I have benefited from property tax dollars at work here in Natrona County, where I have lived most of my life. I'm a regular user of the public library. I use city and county parks, go to the community recreation center, and now that I have a little more gray in my hair, I'm a regular person who goes and uses my senior center. These are all supported by property taxes. The public library has been a place that I have loved and gone since I was a small child. And I have fond memories of watching our county fair parades from the steps of the Carnegie Library. Camping, mountain biking, boating, skiing, hiking, picnicking, various sports activities, using the arena facility, and simply walking on our pathway system, which goes by our windows out here, are all things that I've enjoyed, supported by property taxes. My nephews are buried at Highland Cemetery. Their graves are maintained by property tax dollars. Now that I'm older, my mother and I both regularly enjoy meals, activities, and friendships that we find at the senior center. For many seniors of my acquaintance, the hot meal they get at the senior center may be the only one they get that day. And that will be particularly hard hit by reductions in property taxes. Proposed legislation endangers all those community service and amenities, as well as the things that hardworking families in Wyoming take for granted. That firemen, paramedics, policemen, or sheriffs will show up if we have an emergency. That snow will be cleared from our streets and potholes will be filled in a timely and efficient manner. That the water that comes out of our faucets will be safe to drink. That our garbage will be collected and properly disposed of. That a hospital and medical care will be within minutes, not hours, from our home or our work. Why are we endangering the services and amenities that make our communities places we want to live and raise our families for a property tax reduction that benefits the wealthy more than our hardworking Wyoming families? Property tax is how we pay for the things we value. It is a responsibility we accept as part of being a caring member of our communities. It is a part of how we take care of each other. Proposed legislation to eliminate or reduce property taxes disproportionately benefits a few wealthy individuals at the expense of seniors, school children, and families in Wyoming. Therefore, I urge you not to vote for further reductions.
Thank you. And I would ask everyone, try to keep it pretty tight timeline wise. I know there's probably a lot of people want to speak, but thank you. And thank you for your comments.
Yes, sir.
Next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Corey Cronin. I was born and raised here in Casper. I grew up in a household marked by domestic violence. And after my parents split, my mother raised me on a salary near the poverty line. In that difficult environment, she always emphasized one thing: education could take me anywhere. I took her words to heart. I threw myself into school, into the arts, and into sports. I graduated at the top 10% of my class at NCHS, played multiple instruments in the band, and was on the varsity Nordic ski team for years. But more important than the activities themselves and the education I received were the caring teachers, the mentors, and the coaches who offered the support I wasn't getting at home. Public education gave me more than just knowledge, gave me a lifeline. That lifeline was possible because our community invests in schools. And here in Wyoming, property taxes fund about 70% of our public education system. Cuts to those revenues have already stretched teachers thin, negatively impact arts programming, and put athletics and activities at risk. The very things that changed the course of my life. Now, you might think that someone raised in poverty would welcome lower taxes, but my mother taught me quite the opposite. She said, "Corey, paying taxes is the most patriotic thing we can do." Even when raising a kid around $20,000 a year, she believed it was our duty to contribute to the services that hold our communities together. Today, I hold no anger or bitterness when reflecting on my upbringing. In fact, I feel like the luckiest person in the world, because without those experiences, I would not have had the mentors I did. I wouldn't have marched in the Rose Bowl parade with Wyoming High School All-State Marching Band, or I would not have become intimately familiar with the ski trails and open spaces that make Wyoming so special. I've since built a career, bought a house, and became a property taxpayer here in my hometown. I moved back from Utah to Wyoming last year, and in part because of affordability. But something I do hold is a worry for the future of our state. I fear that if we keep chasing a lower cost of living through property tax cuts, we'll end up with a lower quality of life instead. The education I received, the places where I recreated, and the places I built a stable network of friends and support, all of that is at risk of being defunded due to property tax cuts. I urge you not to cut taxes further. Think of the kids growing up today as I did. Their chances depend on the investments we choose to make today. Please keep investing in Wyoming's future. Give every child the same chance and opportunity that I received. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Deanna Fry, and I'm sad to report I'm not a native, but I got here as quick as I could. When I graduated college, I had a job in Green River, and since then I lived in Green River, Cheyenne, and Casper. So I've seen a little bit of the small town and a little bit of the larger communities. I can't add a whole lot to what has been said, but let me say that I'm proud to be a taxpayer. I didn't know that I would ever say that. I paid my taxes before because it's what good people do. That's what you do. But as this topic came up, I did the research, came up with the same information that other folks did. But what impressed me is looking back at the communities I live in, whether it's a small community or a large community, people come together. They come together for each other. I worked in not-for-profits. People are there for those who need help, whatever, if it's senior citizens, if it's children, if there's somebody in the community that has a fire in their home, people come together. But they also come together in their communities and they develop long-term plans for their communities. And really, they're very much the same no matter where you are. Whether you're in Yoder or whether you're in Jackson, you're concerned about the same things, your people and these services that we've all been talking about. And it's because of those hardworking people being there to develop those plans and carry out those plans, and people like you that go to the legislature and monitor those plans and examine those, that we have what we have. So I think, as they said, property taxes are at the base of everything that we hold dear. I would challenge anybody in this room to say they never did any of these things, services that we talked about. We don't all want to be stopped by the police, but we're glad they're there when they need us. We have kids in school, grandkids in school. We've been to the library. We hold those things dear. I really challenge, I just can't imagine anybody in this room that lives in Wyoming that hasn't done those things and want to see those things there. And if we're going to see those things there, we need to know what's going to happen if taxes are reduced even further or completely. How will we do that? I think you want to take care of your friends, your families, your neighbors, as do I. So I ask you to consider those things as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you guys for all coming here. Where I get lost a little bit is you guys are saying you, meaning us, need to do this, 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 and this. I want to explain just a little bit that the reason why we were ever motivated to change property taxes was because we had senior citizens coming to us that said, Mr. Campbell, I am at a choice, pay my taxes and lose my, or lose my home and eat or buy meds. I was approached with young people that told me, Representative Campbell, we would like to have another baby, but we cannot afford to upgrade in home because there's been so many new people moved in here that have higher buying power that we cannot compete on the wages we're at. So what is your guys' recommendations? We see the problem the same way you do. Just like this young lady here said, you know, we got senior citizens that the only hot meal they get's from the senior center. Well, okay, do we go with that one? Or do we tell the senior, I'm sorry, you can't afford your property anymore. Go to the senior center. We're in a catch-22. What are some of your guys' solutions, please?
Chairman, Representative Campbell, I think some of the carve outs that you guys have been working on, like for seniors, are valid. And I think a well-designed carve out for someone who's struggling, who just wants to stay in the home they've been in for a long time. And, you know, the value of the home has gone up a lot, but they don't want to sell it and realize the profit. They just want to stay where they are. Absolutely. I support a lot of the carve out work that you've done, as long as it's well designed, you know, and I think what concerns me more is this big, it's simple to do this 25% or the 50% or the do away with it. It's more simple than I think a carve out, but that's what concerns me, are these large across the board tax cuts for many of us who, you know, sure, I'd love to have an extra $1,000 a year, but you know, it's not going to change my life. But if we start to see services degrade, that's going to change everybody's life. Yes, yes. And so I think that's what I'm urging, is being very careful. And isn't there a way to find another revenue stream? Like, can we, you know, I feel like that should be put in place, or at least figured out first before you cut. Like, if my husband came home and said, I'm sick of my job, I quit today, I would support him for, you know, of course, he should not stay where he's miserable, but maybe it would be nice if he would talk to me about it first and figure out maybe apply for another job. Maybe I should go, you know, maybe we should start a business, figure it out first. Where's our money going to come from before cutting the revenue, would be my only suggestion. Thank you.
Well, I think everybody's scared, but I don't think they've done all the research on the reform that we're proposing. The reform we're proposing changes the method of which is taxed. It also, we're looking at changing the distribution to the counties and the cities, thus reducing the difference between wealth and poverty and who pays for what. We don't believe we can get rid of property tax and replace it with nothing. And I kind of took offense to one comment made. The only reason we cut property tax is to get elected and we're dishonest and crooked. I would challenge any of you to run for the legislature and come tackle this monster. You treat us like we don't care, but I'm telling you we do. And we're not looking at tax cuts. We're looking at changing it the way it's done. Not getting rid of libraries and senior centers, but as a fine Representative Campbell said, all over the state, there's old people losing their homes. And they can go to the senior center and get a hot meal, and then they can go home and pay property tax. And as far as carving everything out, going after the wealthy to support the less fortunate, quite frankly, that poo-poos capitalism. That's pure socialism. You want us to tell you how much money you can make? No, I listened to something yesterday. Somebody actually told me we don't need billionaires in Wyoming. And it's just a different belief structure. But we're looking at reform, not cuts. And that's quite simply the truth. The worst of the cuts are over. and the school system hasn't seen a cut. Constitutionally, we can't do it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sorry I didn't hear everything, but one of the things I did want to make clear is that we did make property tax cuts, these most recent ones. We tried not to do them in a vacuum. We took a very close look at the budget, understanding that budgets will change. School, for example, as my co-chairman has mentioned, continues to be funded and will continue to be funded. The cuts we made do not impact them from that perspective. It comes from a different bucket, most definitely, that is true. But one of the things I did at least want to let you folks know, I am appreciative for listening to your opinion. It's an opposite side of an opinion, for example, that I typically hear at the door, which is our property tax are skyrocketing. I'm worried about losing my home. But both sides of the conversation have to be heard. And just so you know, and I would speak for really all the legislature, those of us who believe on one side, those of us who believe on the other, truly are trying to look at this. And when we made some of the tax cuts we did, or excuse me, some of the tax exemptions that we put in place, it was carefully thought out. Yes, there are cuts to our counties and our cities and some of our other entities. And at the same time, we tried to make sure we didn't make cuts that did significant harm. So we're doing our best to leave money on the kitchen table and at the same time make sure we fund important services. So we understand that, and I really do appreciate both sides of the conversation. So thank you. Other questions? Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you all for coming because this is where we get the most feedback, and I'm really grateful that you're participating in the government because this is the people's government. And so I'm grateful for that. I just want to echo what they've said, but then also offer that we're not speaking of implementing any grocery tax. I haven't heard that anywhere in the legislature, in the legislative co-workers that I have not heard anybody recommend that comes back. So I just want to clear up that miscommunication. My question is, what would you deem a fair tax where we've got mill levies that come in at above 70 cents on the dollar or some of them at 65 cents on the dollar? What would you deem a fair tax?
Guess that was a question to you, so. I'm not sure who wants to address it. Please.
I'm certainly not an expert, but what little bit I've read is, every state has their own revenue system, and I read somewhere that it should be a three-legged stool. Very unpopular idea, but if you have an income tax, a property tax, and sales tax, then you have a stable system. And so we only have two of those in Wyoming, and I'm not an expert on how to design a system, but I think sometimes you have to do unpopular things so that it can be designed so that people who truly are unable to pay don't have to pay, and that those of us who are able to pay a fair amount and not an excessive amount. And I agree, you don't just go after the rich because they're rich, but on the other hand, like I said, this $1,000 I'm saving, keep it, use it for the schools and stuff. It's not going to change my life enough that I would rather it go to the public good, honestly. And I know I'm just a small property owner. I know some people, maybe their tax bill is a lot more impressive because their wealth is much more impressive. And so maybe they get very upset when they pay, tens of thousands of dollars in taxes. I don't know. But I think to be fair, you do have to consider where a person is in life and whether they're able to have basic necessities before if they can pay less, I think that's the fair way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just ask, let's keep it fairly brief. There might be others to speak, and I don't want to cut them off. In fact, I think the co-chairman has a question, but I think committee, if you don't mind, if there's others to speak, let's make sure we let them speak. I don't want to cut them off too much. So anyway, go ahead, co-chairman.
The only thing I'd like to point out too is on the 25% tax. across the board, it had a value it was capped at. So all the people who make huge money and live in the county of the mountains are more than paying their fair share. They took the biggest hit. So in a sense, it is a carve out, and it was aimed at helping middle class and below. And I just want to make sure you guys understand that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Kevin, one second, Representative Storer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Coming from the county where the mountains are sharp and so are the prices for homes, I do have a few comments to make. Thank you all for coming. I do think these are really important issues, and I really appreciate the debate. I do think we need to understand a few things. One is I have yet to find anyone in my community that who has the highest property taxes in the state to have left that community because they could not pay their property taxes. They may have left because they took advantage of an escalated price on their house and decided to cash in. But the refund program has addressed the issue of helping people who really do need the support and the tax exemptions. What this committee has failed to do, I think, has looked at who's paying which taxes in the state. And so when we talk about what we did in June, the idea of getting rid of property taxes and instituting a sales tax, we really do need, and I would encourage all of us to look at what that means for who's paying those taxes. I think that is a significant shift from the upper class to the lower class. And despite the fact that the 25% cap is limited to $1 million, the 4% cap on increases is what my constituents, my wealthy constituents especially, are benefiting from. And that is $400 million in assessed value that is no longer coming into the county or the state to pay for schools across the state. So instead you have an average home in the state that's about $500,000 or up to that. They're getting a tax break of $335. But a property that's over $10 million is getting a tax break of over $13,000 when you look at the combined exemptions that we have passed in the last 2 years. So please do understand who's paying what taxes and who's really getting a break. And I would encourage all of us to look at this and look at that in light of the idea of getting rid of property tax and what that would mean for the cost of sales tax for everyone in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And Representative Brown, and again, committee, I think we want to at least ask our questions, maybe once we let the people speak, but go ahead, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard earlier that from one of you that we had passed a property tax cut without a backfill. I would like to point out that the House overwhelmingly passed a property tax cut bill, in fact, 2 with backfill, and yet that was overturned. Have you talked to any of your representatives or senators and asked them to pass a bill with backfill that we could take care of more of this?
Chairman, Representative Brown, I do not recall any of us saying that there wasn't a backfill. We did say that there was a shortfall. And yes, there is a backfill from our rainy day fund. That is a very limited resource. And since our shortfall on the way we're funding education already existed before we came into this year, and now we're having to backfill because of property tax cuts, we are going to deplete that fund very rapidly. So my question comes back to you. You pointed a backfill. We have little buckets that we move around and we take money from with the legislature, but our rainy day fund is going to go away. And then what is our recourse? Because we no longer have that money to backfill. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we save the other questions to see if there's any other people who want to speak? And please go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to address a couple of things. One to Senator McEwen's comment about taking offense to my statement about campaigning and dishonesty. I mean, anyone who was in Wyoming for the 2024 campaign season saw flyers and mailers saying property tax cuts. Like it's not dishonest to say that was a recurring theme, and nowhere was there being discussed the other shoe that would fall and the consequences of those cuts, right? I also am aware of a situation where a state legislator, their city council was talking about the budget impacts. Like, I think they were talking about the grass being cut or something like that. We're not going to be able to cut the grass as often. We're not going to be able to plow the streets. And the state legislator went and basically told the city council to stop talking about that. Which I find is a means of suppressing the full conversation about these property tax cuts. And finally, to Representative Lean's comment, the Joint Appropriations Committee requested a memo from the Legislative Service Office asking about the impacts of removing the exemption on groceries. To say that is not a conversation that is taking place in the legislature to look at offsetting some of these tax cut and lost revenues, I don't think that is true.
Well, thank you. Representative Campbell, please go ahead and let's keep it short and let's move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is a
This is
debate
going to
that
be
we're
very
going for
short. I
days.
want everybody to know that next year on the ballot, the people of the state of Wyoming are going to get a choice if they want a 50% tax cut. So I want you guys to be mindful that what's coming, and perhaps the communities that are so desperate in everything that's lacking, I don't know how that vote's going to turn out, but that's out of the hands of the state legislature. So perhaps it could be prudent for some of these people that thought, a 1 or 2% cut that actually hit them hurt. Perhaps they should prepare for the voice of the people. Thank you.
And thank you, Co-Chairman, please.
The other thing I want to point out is as we've gone through the exemptions and looked at new legislation, one of the lines in all of it, or it'll be a separate bill, will prohibit a grocery tax. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Co-Chairman, and thank you for bringing it up. These are, again, I think these are good topics, and at the end of the day, I have definitely been open. I definitely, as most of you know, I would say all of the tax cuts or tax exemptions have been put in place to try to deal with massive inflation that we've seen in the last 4, 5, 6 years. Everybody's seen it. Everybody's felt it. It was an attempt to adjust to that. County, city, local budgets have seen significant increases, anywhere from 15 to 30, 40, 50% increases in their budgets as well. So in most of the cases, I can just tell you guys that when we made these decisions, we didn't look at the counties and local governments and say, we looked very closely, say, how much does this cut the counties and cities and local governments? Because we understood we were asking people to manage your budget. Definitely. We definitely understood that when we did it. And so I think the conversation is a good one. We'll bring it up, but I would ask everybody on both sides, try to make sure we all take an intellectually honest look at this and say, hey, where do the budgets adjustment? For example, when you start talking in, I can't speak for all city and county budgets, for example, but I'll use those as an example because schools get paid for. But in many cases, some counties with the big mountains, property tax hits them very hard, right? And we were very conscious of that. Other counties, quite differently. Many counties, we've got counties that are impacted as little as, who are very upset about the cut and were as impacted as little as less than 1%, just to give you guys a feel for. So we were very conscious of that, and we remain very conscious of the fact government must be funded. We get that completely. And we're really, truly not trying to cut services out from underneath everybody's feet. I think that's the perception. But also there's a large volume of people. As much as there's a great group of folks here, thank you for coming, for all of you. But keep in mind, we're trying to be conscious of both sides of this, which is the people that are hurting as well as people. And we're trying to find an elegant way to make sure we have a predictable budget for the homeowners and for the people, for our government entities. So we will continue to pursue that with, quite honestly, with deep and thoughtful consideration for all of this. But anyway, just wanted to throw that out that we try to be as very respectful. And again, I do thank everybody for the opportunity, for you guys speaking here today as well. Now, I didn't know if others wanted to speak, if we wanted to step up, and if you would all please do me a favor. I have once again proven my inability to manage time. I've done that fantastically today. And so those of you who are speaking in, please keep it to a couple of minutes if you would. That would be very appreciative from my perspective, just so we can keep the ball moving. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
My name is Mary Apple, and I came from Campbell County. I live in Gillette. I pay property taxes both on ranch land as well as a home in Gillette. I am concerned in cutting these property taxes that we're going to find we are going to hurt our future by cutting things now. You have to replace it with increased sales tax, or you have to start a state tax. So a state income tax. Those are your big choices. We have some of the lowest property taxes in the nation. We're number 11 or number 12. And everybody who is lower than us also has a state income tax, except Nevada. And they have very high sales tax. So I think if I had a choice between paying property tax or paying a state income tax, my choice would be property tax. I don't have a lot of money, but I've planned for my retirement. I moved back here 20 years ago to take care of an aging mother, and I thought this would be a great place to retire. But myself and many of my friends who live in Gillette and in the northeast corner of Wyoming are questioning our choices, that maybe it would be better to go someplace else. I have roots there, I have family there, but I don't think cutting property taxes and creating a crisis is going to can be solved by sales tax unless you implement a state income tax. And that's not a solution in my book. I've lived in other states where I've paid state income tax. It's pricey. So I choose property taxes.
Thank you. Next speaker. And please say your name clearly. I'm sorry, I'm not catching them all. I apologize for that. That's my bad. Your last name.
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Ann McKinnon. I live in Casper, and I've been a property taxpayer for 35 years. I am 73. I could qualify for all the kinds of exemptions you've passed, and I am one of the people who has insisted on paying my full rate, regardless of the exemptions that you've offered. I have not applied for those. I am sorry to see you all working on details that are not the kind of details that Representative Storer mentioned that you should be considering. And I think what we're looking at is the fact that Wyoming has had such a wonderful ride on mineral taxes all these years. And we now have to come to grips with the fact that we don't have that coming in at the rate that it was. So myself, you've heard all the different things and I'm very glad to hear that you've been thinking about government services and trying to avoid those cuts, because I've really wondered, is this some kind of political experiment? You want to see what people care about, or maybe you just want to destroy government? I am so glad to hear, I'm glad this discussion happened. I'm so glad that's not what your intent has been. But, you know, the people don't track the ins and outs of state and federal, state and local revenues. And I think it's incredibly important for the legislature. It's your job to be doing that. And it sounds like you are trying to do that. But I think you should listen to the questions on who the impact is on. Myself, I'm not wealthy. I think an income tax would be appropriate. The three-legged stool is what we need. And I think you all need to be working hard to educate your constituents before they see this opportunity to cut their taxes by 50%. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Ms. McKinnon. Sir.
Try me quick. So Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Dirk Andrews, and I am a kindergarten first grade looping teacher here in Casper, who proudly now serves as the vice president for the Wyoming Education Association. I've listened to the conversation. I'm not an expert. I'm not going to say that I am, but I am just throwing out some information that I think needs to make sure that it's at the back of the minds as we have these conversations and as you guys move through this process of looking at some of these cuts or exemptions, as you call them. So local governments in Wyoming depend heavily on property tax dollars to fund essential local services. And one of the most important of those services is our public schools. Under Wyoming's school funding model, each district has a foundation program guarantee, essentially what it should cost to provide every student with an adequate, equitable, and modern education. Most of our districts are what we call an entitlement. You all probably know what that is. They get the money back, or they basically have the dollars that they have more than they need, sorry. They fall short of their guarantee. On the other hand, we have recapture districts where local revenues exceed the guarantee. Those dollars are sent to the statewide school foundation program and are redistributed. So here's the reality. The money that comes from those recaptured districts isn't enough to close the gap. The state has to cover the rest. You've all said schools will be funded. I've heard that. And in recent years, the state's share has been going up, while the local share, funded by property taxes, has been going down. That shift is directly tied to property tax cuts that have reduced local revenues. If property taxes are reduced further, the state's share will increase again, and by law, backed by court precedent, the legislature is obligated to fully fund education. That obligation is non-negotiable. Education must be funded first to the level that is both adequate and equitable, and the lack of revenue is not an excuse. So Wyoming's economy is the third most volatile in the nation. The question isn't if we will face an economic downturn, it's when and how bad. When that day comes, you will still be required to fully fund public education, regardless of revenue conditions. So yes, we have some dollars that are sitting in the Legislative Stabilization Reserve account, but given recent legislation, we're once again staring at a structural deficit. Current projections show roughly $600 million shortfall in the education funding by the 29-30 biennium. Cutting property taxes further will only make that challenge steeper. So I ask that as you consider any further changes to property taxes, that you keep in mind the direct impact on our ability to fund public schools locally, the increased burden that places on the state budget, and the legal obligations that that have to meet education funding needs no matter the economy. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Did I catch that right? Andrew or Andrews? Thank you. Sorry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Counselor Pollock.
committee. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Amber Pollock with the Casper City Council. And I'm not here with a strong position one way or another on any of the measures that you're going to be taking up later in the day and tomorrow, but rather to provide perspective as an elected official who was tasked with budgeting this year in the face of the 25% property tax exemption enacted last year. I hope to provide a window to you about how those cuts materialized in real life here in our community, just as you continue to go through this conversation. I also want to convey the angst the local leaders here continue to feel about the future of municipal funding and how changes impact our ability to serve our residents. I want to start by just laying out our approach to budgeting in this first year since the 25% exemption went into effect, so that you understand what our process was and what our kind of strategy and thinking was behind implementing this. Our first step to address the reduction in revenue was to work diligently to get our numbers right. We worked very closely with the county assessor's office to refine the expected revenue reduction and ultimately plan for a $1.8 million reduction to our general fund and another $254,000 to our weed and pest budget. This is inclusive of the 25% property exemption, the smaller exemptions that were passed in the previous session, and expected market declines that also impact our property tax revenues. We did give some consideration to in our process to the suggestion that revenue loss will be made up through sales tax increases. However, our analysis indicates that for every $85 we currently get per household in property tax, we'd get just over $5 through projected increases in sales tax. So that does not provide a meaningful offset. After we established our numbers, our city departments worked to develop strategies to reduce spending. For Casper, these strategies came in several forms. A primary one was looking at unfilled positions and determining which, if any of them, could remain unfilled. From there, we looked at seasonal staff and made reductions to those allocations. Finally, we looked at services, targeting those that would be least impactful to the community first. Ultimately, 4 full-time staff positions went unfunded. Our part-time seasonal park staff was reduced by 50%. Irrigation, fertilization, snow removal in parks and trails was reduced. And then there were a suite of smaller reductions that were a little less impactful, but added up to our total $1.8 million. For me, this was a pragmatic and measured approach. It was important to me that we didn't overreact and be more aggressive with reductions than necessary, but it was also important to me that we didn't get surprised at the end of the year having underestimated the impacts. For further context in this step, it's important to understand that the general fund, where the majority of the impact was felt, is where the core of local government lives. Police, fire, street maintenance, recreation, and community development all rely on it. And in our fiscal year 26 budget, property taxes make up 8% of that fund. That sounds small, but when you remove that slice, we don't have many options to shift money around. Casper's budget follows strict rules. Utility revenues stay with utilities. Capital projects rely on a cash-on-hand policy before being constructed, and reserves are held according to municipal accounting standards and, in some cases, state statute. In each case, these funds have specific purposes and can only be used for those purposes. We have varying amounts of cash on hand at any given time based on where we're at in our capital cycle. But those monies are not available to us to offset the $1.8 million because they are being held to pay for capital projects that have been approved by council as part of an annual capital agenda. We have varying amounts of additional funds above reserves accumulated in our utility accounts, but similarly, those funds could not be used to offset the $1.8 million general fund shortfall because they are being accumulated for specific major capital projects needed in the future for those utilities. For instance, in the Balefield Fund, every 7 to 8 years, we must open and close a new cell at the landfill. In order to do that, we need to accumulate over time several $1 million in that fund to avoid massive rate hikes on our citizens when the time comes to open and close that cell. Each utility fund has similar needs that we plan for in advance, and it is this type of future planning that these funds need to facilitate. We cannot responsibly take a more short-sighted approach and make transfers from these funds to bolster the general fund in the face of this $1.8 million revenue reduction. After all that was done, we worked to communicate the approach to the impact, our approach and the impacts to the community. We have worked hard to be upfront with the community about the trade-offs that are coming due to the property tax reduction, and we've gotten mixed feedback from the community. While there are certainly some who say the property tax cuts were necessary and perhaps didn't go far enough, as I know you've heard, we also have heard from a sizable portion of our community that they do not want to see local government funding reduced. It's a rare day when I have a constituent who approaches me asking the city to provide less or worse service to them. They do not want to see brown parks or poorly maintained trails like they're seeing right now, and I don't blame them, but I also know these impacts are very minor compared to what would be necessary should we see further reductions without backfill or structural change. For this reason, the angst continues here at the local level as conversations happen at the state, but we're hopeful that we can continue the dialogue with you and the rest of the legislature to find solutions that preserve the critical work of local governments, and I appreciate your efforts to think about reform in that way.
Co-Chairman, please, and thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for testifying. How much is your city budget? The total overall?
The whole total budget or the general fund?
Councilor Pollock.
The whole budget.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, fine.
Whole total budget about 180 million.
So you have 180 million in your city budget and you took a $1.8 million cut. Am I understanding that correctly? 1.6?
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Pollock.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct if you take the full budget. So I believe that might have been the 1%. Chairman Locke was reflecting to the committee earlier. I don't think that's a super helpful way to analyze that. I think it makes more sense to look at the portion of the general fund that was impacted, which was about 3%. like, again, as I said, it sounds small. It's not dramatic. As I represented to you here, I didn't say the city collapsed, did I? I said, we lost 4 full-time positions. We lost 50% of our park staff. We've changed our maintenance schedules and that sort of thing. So, we've managed it. We've budgeted it. And I have some concerns about the sustainability of that, but certainly we were able to find a path forward with that $1.8 million cut to the revenues.
Yes, Co-Chairman, please.
So does the city of Casper have a reserve fund?
Mr.
How
Chairman.
much is it?
We have several reserve funds. We have reserve funds that are dedicated specifically to each utility. We have an opportunity fund, which could be considered something like a reserve fund that helps with capital planning and capital projects. So there's a handful of them. I don't have the full budget in front of me, but I think that's fairly typical. Many of those reserves are required by state statute, and if not required by state statute, are necessitated through our membership in industry best practice, organizations that suggest that in municipal accounting, certain number of days, depending on the fund, should be required in reserve, anywhere from, I think, 30 to 180, depending on the fund.
Yes, Co-Chairman, please.
Here's the animal we're wrestling with. There are some special districts that have 50 million in reserves. There are some school districts that have over 100 million in reserves, and they don't touch the reserves, and has the energy money basically out of Campbell County and the Powder River Basin and down by Green River are starting to shrink. But we're trying to figure out a way to make this fair. We're not trying to get rid of services. But in the distribution, and I want to emphasize that, in the distribution of tax dollars and revenue, there's problems. And the only way they can have these huge reserves is either by not running their budgets right, or we're overtaxing them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Pollock, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. I think talking about reserves can get a little bit tricky. I understand that when you see a total of 50 million or 100 million in reserves, and I can't speak to those specific instances. I'm not sure what the nature of those reserves are, why they're there, how they got there. But I can speak to our philosophy on reserves and why we do what we do with reserves. So I see reserves as ebbing and flowing in our way that we budget outside of the minimum reserve that we must have in that account. You will see our accounts from time to time increasing over that minimum amount. And in our case, at least, it's done strategically. We've got a $50–60 million capital need investment in the wastewater treatment coming down the pike. If we don't start accumulating reserves now, the only way we're getting that done is to come ask the state for the entire amount. $50 million, $60 million, that's our entire annual capital agenda for one project. So, or even exceeds that. So what we do right now is we set rates such that we can achieve that level of amount balance in our reserve for when the time comes. As I mentioned with the bail fill, that's an easier one because that's a 7 to 8 year cycle. The capital replacement agenda at the wastewater treatment might be 50 years. And so that's a longer term planning that we have to be responsible for. But, at some point that reserve is going to need to have tens of millions of dollars in it for us to be able to make that capital improvement. And so you might see that fund growing over time. I don't think that means we're being irresponsible. I think that means we're planning for that major need. Otherwise, what's our answer for when our wastewater treatment system goes down?
Mr. Co-Chair.
I'm not implying that every reserve is wrong.
Sure.
I'm implying that there are many that are wrong. A lot of them are in special districts. I have one in my area. And we're just trying to figure this out. We don't even know what we're going to propose next committee meeting. That's why we have many different options. But at the end of the day, the 25% tax cut cost everybody anywhere from 1.8 to 1.9%. And the truth of the matter is, as we go down, it's more economical than legislative. And with that, thank you for listening to me, and I appreciate everything you had to say.
Can we, and then please feel free to answer back. Senator Ide, please, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Mr. Andrews. Respectfully speaking, so it doesn't sound like I'm being derogatory, your involvement with the WEA, I can't remember your position, but could you explain to me, I always try to drill down on this, Wyoming per student, give or take $20,000 that that the state is responsible for. We're higher than all of our surrounding states, and we're usually in the top 5 in the country. Could you explain to me, as in particular, our neighbors to the west, Idaho, Utah, they're literally half per student to educate their students there, and test results are very comparable. Could you address that? Thank you.
So I'll start by saying I'm the vice president for the association. Second off, I would say I don't have all the answers here today, and that wasn't kind of what I was trying to get across. I know that Wyoming, we're very rural. We have a lot of open space and a lot of different opportunities. And what Wyoming believes that some of those other states don't is that every child that deserves an education. And so we work our buns off to make sure that those kids get educated just like anywhere else. I would say, I don't really have your answers at this point. So I will do some research. I'll get back to you. I don't want to talk out the side of my mouth. I don't think that's appropriate. Really, my intention today was just to say, as we are working through this process, I wanted to make sure that education was put into the room.
Follow up, or you're okay? Thank you for that. And just so you know, education definitely detailed conversations on that. I can tell you that in the back room, just to put everybody quickly at ease, in the back room, impacts to cities, impacts to special districts, impacts to counties. We went through that. I can tell you I've crunched more numbers, and I probably couldn't remember any of them at this moment. But I can tell you we went through the numbers in detail because we understand, and one of the critical issues I continue to raise, and I want you all to understand, we're very aware governments need money to run, no question about it. Now, make no mistake, we always push, there's a group of people here that will push to say, let's just make sure we're doing the proper role of government, right? Education, definitely understand that, and it has always been well understood in the process of us taking a look at this. So no doubt about that. And I do apologize, ma'am. I skipped you when you had a question. I apologize, please. Well, I didn't, I know I'd cut you off, and I apologize for that. I wanted to make sure I'm respectful there.
No, that's fine. I'm concerned about hospitals and services such as that, because this state is already a wasteland for healthcare, and people have to travel quite a ways. But we got to have hospitals, and it concerns me that as graduates don't want to stay here because the basic things of life are unattainable, like having a hospital. I mean, that's very important. And I realize we have to take care of it's not pure socialism to take care of the people who can't afford it, or who they want to cut all nonprofit funding in Campbell County. Those nonprofits probably run those situations far better than if it were a government agency, far more efficiently. Our Council of Community Services, etc., our Yes House, those items are funded and managed very efficiently compared to if they saw a need. They needed to be there, and we still need them. and we need to fund them. And I'm not talking about just basics. I mean, this is part of whether you live in Texas or Wyoming or California. There are many hospitals that are right on the edge. We know of 4 that have shut down in the state in the last few years, and people drive a long way. I don't think I'd want to live in a town without a hospital.
Thank you. And Representative Lane, and let's kind of start putting a wrapper on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming today. I just would like the record to reflect that the 1.8 million that our Councilwoman Bullock speaks of, 220,000 of that is mineral reduction that the legislature had nothing to do with. My question then becomes, how much money did Casper as a municipality donate to nonprofits this year out of their budget?
Councilman Pilot.
Chairman.
Please, no,
Sorry.
verify.
I wouldn't say we donated any money to nonprofits. I would say that part of our 5th cent funding was allocated to nonprofits via resolution that the voters enacted. So I believe it was 2 million over 4 years. It could have been 1 million. I know that we reduced it. I think it was 2. We reduced it in this last time, reflecting some of the sentiment that we had heard in town that folks wanted us to prioritize streets predominantly, which we further shifted to. And we may do that again, depending on the sentiment of the voters of the day, looking at what their priorities are for 5th cent funding. But we didn't surprise the voters with that contribution. That was part of our initial resolution when we put that measure on the ballot in the first place.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Councilwoman. You say that a lot of this is voter enacted. Next year on the ballot, they're going to have a 50% decrease in your revenue. That's going to be voter enacted. What is the city of Casper if a one less than 2% cut is sending you guys spiraling? What would a possible 4% cut do to the city? Have you guys looked at that, and are you guys being proactive? Because if the people do that, I don't believe you're going to be able to come and yell like you would be able to with the state legislature. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Pollock.
Representative Campbell, I'm sorry if I've given you the impression that I'm yelling at you or that we're spiraling. I think that's a mischaracterization. We're not spiraling. We had to cut $1.8 million out of the budget. That's just a fact. It's not, I have certain feelings about it, but I'm not in a panic mode over it. It wasn't pleasant. I certainly wish that we could continue to maintain the parks in the same way that we have, and that we, could fund our part-time park employees, that we could fill those positions. But I don't think my hair's on fire either. I think that, I'm just trying to lay out for you what that looked like.
Yeah.
Certainly, I hope that, through continued public education, which is part of the reason we've tried to be proactive about letting people know what 25% looks like, so that they can imagine for themselves what 50% looks like, so that they know when they go to the ballot box, is that a yes or a no for them? I think if we can't convey to them what did $1.8 million out of the budget look like, how did that feel to you and your family, and what were the impacts there, I think we've done a disservice when it comes time for them to make that choice next November. So I think that, we certainly are aware of the possibility that could happen. We will go through what I imagine would be a very similar process that we did this time, which would be unfilled positions, part-time positions, services. We're in the middle of a priority-based budgeting process right now to help us get a really good handle on what our services, each individual service costs, and what the impacts are, so that if that happened, we could more easily prioritize what the things were that needed to go or could stay. So I think that we certainly would handle that if it came down the road. And I think that the impacts would be even more mixed. Perhaps we would see lots of folks who were very happy that passed. And I think we would see continued and stronger upset in our community from some folks as well, when we're not able to deliver some of the things that they had become accustomed to.
Thank you, Councilor Pollock. And, okay. Okay, you haven't asked much, so Representative Riggins, but guys, let's, we need to wrap this up because we're rapidly getting to that point where we've already an hour over and we got to be very conscious of our time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for Mr. Andrew. You mentioned how the loss of property tax revenue is impacting and making the state carry more of the load directly. So over the last 6 years, we've had a 70% increase in property tax. Was that not carrying the load for the past half decade or so?
Mr. Andrew.
Chairman, Representative Riggins, I honestly, yeah, I mean, that's how it works. I mean, that's the process, that's the funding, that's what it looks like. So I'm just, like I said, my intention here today, you're working through a process. And I just wanted to make sure that education was a part of that conversation as you try and figure out what this is going to look like. That was my intention. I'm not.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew. Okay. I think what we should do we have others in the room that absolutely need to speak on this, or can we, have the folks who have spoken for most of the people in the room? Are we okay there in terms of comments? And do we have anybody online? I'm guessing we do. No.
We don't have anybody online for this comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Very good. Are we okay in the room? Or, oh, I'm sorry. I missed you up there, and we'll kind of finish up. And if there are, we'll listen to the last few folks, and then maybe we'll probably push the third thing to after lunch. Is that okay? Okay, perfect.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Lori Erbkite with Wyoming Realtors, and I'll be really brief. And I am here to speak about the long-term homeowners exemption. I was the one that brought the information forward. It was a sale that happened in Park County where the people that had qualified had applied for and qualified for the long-term homeowners exemption. They sold their house on May 29th, and the proration of the taxes were done, but without the exemption. So I had an aha moment today because technically they didn't qualify for that exemption because they would not have lived in that house for 8 months this year. I had thought it was 8 months the previous year, but now I've been corrected. So technically they didn't qualify anyway. But because they applied and it was approved, that exemption still applies to that property. So the new owner gets that full exemption, even though he does not qualify. He's not 65 years of age or older and has not paid taxes in Wyoming for 25 years. So we still have some issues there on how this works. I would feel happy if the exemption went with the people. How the assessors deal with that, I don't know. But it certainly is the people that have to qualify. So it seems to me that the exemption should stay with the people. I'm willing to continue discussing it. One of the other issues, as Mr. Gill pointed out, is that the title companies, some will accept the proration using the exemption, some will not. Some want proof. We can add that in our contracts as realtors, but not all sales go through realtors. Not all real estate licensees are realtors. So we can work on those things, but there is a glitch in there. We've got somebody in Park County, and maybe it's the only time it happened all year. I don't know. But basically, the way it's set up now, if you're a senior, don't sell until September 1st. It's hold off, don't sell until September 1st, and then you can get your exemption. But otherwise, they're quite frankly not eligible for it, and yet somebody's getting it. Happy to try and answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Erbkite. Any questions? I think we've kind of pounded on that because I do, oh, sorry. Co-chairman, please.
Would you support the 8-month language coming out of that bill?
Mr. Chairman.
Erbkite.
And I struggle with that because when that whole debate went on, it was about, we wanted for people that were full-time residents of Wyoming. The 8 months was thrown in there because we wanted people that were snowbirds to still be able to get an exemption. I'd be okay with it coming out of there. That would certainly make it simpler. But maybe we say 8 years or 8 months of the previous year. They're applying for these anytime, and if we change that application date, as the assessors had suggested, to the 1st of March, you're saying you're going to live there for 8 months out of that year. Who knows? You might get hit by a truck. So maybe it would say 8 months the previous year would make more sense.
Thank you. Any other questions or? Mr. Burkett, thank you. And by the way, thank you for bringing this to our attention, because these are the little smoothing bumps that we have to look closely at. As was mentioned by the assessor, she mentioned that it's probably not a huge impact, but by the same token, they are bumps that impact individuals, and we want to make sure we smooth out as many of those as we can. So I really do appreciate you bringing this to our attention. Thank you so much, and thank you for coming and testifying.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And since we are, I think, at the end of the, let's see, I lost track of my agenda, but we are at the end of that previous conversation. And what I do want to say is, for those of you who spoke on the property tax issues in the areas of concern, I really do appreciate you coming up here, talking about those and bringing up the issues. We do have to be mindful of the fact it takes money to run government. There's two sides of the population here. For those of you who said, hey, you know what, I can afford it, I'm going to pay my taxes, I'm going to pay my full amount, that's awesome. That's great. And by the same token, I understand we're concerned about local services. So we are very conscious of that. We're very conscious of schools. When we made these cuts, we understood, and be advised that at the state level too, we understand we have to manage our budgets too. We have to manage our spending too. We weren't looking at just, for lack of a better term, giving a haircut to the locals and to the schools. In fact, the schools don't get a haircut. So we viewed that very clearly as impacts. We, the state, need to manage our budget and our spending, same as you. So I do again, thank you for coming up and speaking. I really do appreciate all of that. So, and that being said, committee, is there anything else we need to address before lunch? And I assume everybody's okay with us pushing that third topic off till right after lunch? Very good. Then what we'll do is we'll recess for, it's an hour, okay, committee? We'll recess for an hour. We'll be back here at 1:30. And thank you all for coming here. And those of you who spoke, I appreciate it.